I spent 40 years running into burning buildings while others ran out. You develop a sense for danger, a smell, a sound, a wrongness in the air. When my daughter texted me not to come for Christmas, every alarm in my body screamed, smoke. She was in a fire I couldn't see. And this time, I wasn't waiting for backup. The text that destroyed my world arrived at 9:47 p.m. on December 22nd. It had my daughter's number, but the words belonged to a stranger. I was in my cabin in rural Oregon, 3 hours outside Portland, wrapping presents by the wood stove. The fire crackled softly, throwing dancing shadows across the pine walls. Outside, snow had started to fall, the first real snow of the season, the kind that makes everything clean and quiet. I'd spent the afternoon baking cinnamon rolls from scratch, using the recipe my late wife Helena perfected over 30 years of Christmas mornings. These weren't just any cinnamon rolls. They were traditional, memory, love translated into butter and sugar and cinnamon bark. I'd ground myself. My daughter Cassidy and I had made them together every Christmas since she was 4 years old, her small hands dusted with flour, her laugh filling the kitchen when the dough stuck to her fingers. This year was supposed to be different. Special. It would be our first Christmas without Helena, my wife, Cassidy's mother, who'd passed 2 years ago from what the doctors called stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The grief had been a wildfire that consumed everything, our routines, our joy, the very air in our home. But this year, Cassidy had called me in November with determination in her voice. The same tone she'd used when she decided to become a nurse, when she swore she'd save lives, the way the hospice nurses had tried to save her mother. Papa, she'd said she only called me that when her heart was full. I want you to come to Seattle for Christmas. To my house. Trevor and I. We want to start a new tradition. With you. Trevor, her husband of 3 years. Pharmaceutical sales representative. Clean cut. Polite. The kind of man who shook your hand firmly and looked you in the eye, who brought wine to dinner and complimented Helena's cooking. I'd had my reservations when they started dating. He came from money, from a world of country clubs and vacation homes, while Cassidy and I were more comfortable in hiking boots than cocktail parties. But he'd made her smile again after Helena died, and for that, I was grateful. Or I had been. Until 9:47 p.m. My phone buzzed on the table next to the cooling cinnamon rolls. I picked it up, expecting Cassidy's usual evening check-in. Maybe a photo of the Christmas tree she'd mentioned putting up, or a complaint about Seattle traffic. Instead, I read, "Stay away, old man. Your pity party ends now. Cass doesn't want you here. Find somewhere else to be pathetic this Christmas." I stared at the screen. Read it again. And again. The words didn't make sense. Not because they were cruel, though they were, razor sharp and designed to wound, but because they were wrong. Fundamentally, linguistically wrong. Cassidy never called me old man. Never. When she was little, it was Papa. As a teenager going through her rebellious phase, it was Dad, said with that particular emphasis that meant she was testing boundaries but still respected them. When she was angry, truly angry, the kind of fury that came maybe twice in her whole life, she called me Robert, my first name, cold and formal. But old man? That was something a stranger would say. Someone who didn't know her, didn't know us, didn't know that our relationship had been built on 30 years of mutual respect and inside jokes and the kind of love that doesn't need to announce itself because it's simply there, like oxygen. And pity party? Helena used to say that. It was her phrase when one of us was wallowing, her gentle way of pulling us out of our heads. Enough with the pity party. Robert, let's go for a walk. Come on, Cass, no more pity party. Ice cream fixes everything. After Helena died, neither Cassidy nor I could bring ourselves to use those words. They hurt too much. They tasted like absence. Whoever sent this text knew just enough to weaponize our grief, but not enough to sound like Cassidy. I called her immediately, straight to voicemail. Her voice, recorded months ago, bright and professional. "Hi. You've reached Cassidy Brennan, RN. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If this is a medical emergency, please hang up and dial 911. I tried again. Voicemail. My hands started to shake. Not from fear yet, but from something older. Something I'd learned in 4 decades of firefighting. The moment when your training kicks in and your body knows, even before your mind accepts it, that something is very, very wrong. I called Trevor's number. It rang. Once, twice. On the third ring, someone picked up. But it wasn't Trevor. Hello? A woman's voice. Older, smooth, the kind of voice that's used to being obeyed. This is Robert Chen, I said, forcing my voice steady. I'm looking for my daughter. Is Trevor there? A pause. Too long. In my years running emergency calls, I'd learned that hesitation means calculation. And calculation means lies are coming. Oh, Robert, the woman said. And I recognized her now, Olivia, Trevor's mother. We'd met exactly 3 times. At the wedding, at one awkward Thanksgiving, and at a charity gala. Cassidy had dragged me to where I'd spent most of the night, uncomfortable, in a rented tux. I'm afraid Trevor and Cassidy left for Cabo this morning. Last-minute trip. She's been so stressed lately, you know, with the holidays and work and, well, everything since Helena passed. They needed a break. Every word was smooth, practiced. But underneath, I heard something else. A tremor. Nervousness, maybe. Or excitement. The kind predators feel when they think they've cornered prey. Cassidy didn't mention any trip, I said carefully. We've been planning Christmas together for weeks. Oh. You know how young people are. Impulsive. She probably didn't want to hurt your feelings. Canceling on you like that. Olivia's voice dripped with false sympathy. She asked me to call you, actually, but I suppose she decided to text instead. She felt terrible about it, liar. But I didn't say that. Instead, I listened. In the background, I could hear sounds. Not the sterile quiet of an empty house, but noise. Music. Not Christmas carols. Something with heavy bass, aggressive and obscene, the kind of rap music that celebrates violence and treats women like property. I could hear glass clinking, male voices laughing. The unmistakable sounds of a party happening in real time. Is that? Are you having a gathering? I asked. Another pause. Just a small family thing. The boys are over, Blake and Garrett. You remember Trevor's brothers? I did. Barely. Blake, mid-30s. Former college football player who'd flamed out after a steroid scandal and now worked in private security. Whatever that meant. Garrett, younger. Tech industry dropout with a trust fund and a recreational drug habit he thought he was hiding. Neither of them had impressed me at the wedding. Both had that particular arrogance that comes from never facing real consequences. If you're with Trevor's brothers, then Trevor didn't go to Cabo, I said flatly. Olivia laughed. A tinkling, artificial sound. Oh, no, just the boys and me. Girl talk with my daughter-in-law got cut short when they decided on the trip. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. What I knew was that every instinct I'd honed over 4 decades was screaming that this woman was lying to my face and that my daughter was in danger. I'd like to speak with Cassidy, I said, just to hear it from her. She's on a plane, Robert. Over the Pacific by now. No cell service. I'm sure she'll call you when they land. Olivia's voice had cooled. The pretense of friendliness was evaporating. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests. What airline? I cut her off. Excuse me? What airline did they take to Cabo? I'll call the airline. Have them send a message. Silence. Then Olivia's voice, no longer smooth, edged with something sharp. I don't appreciate the interrogation, Robert. Your daughter is fine. She's an adult. She made a choice. Respect it. The line went dead. I sat there in my kitchen, the cinnamon rolls growing cold, the fire dying to embers, snow falling silently outside. I pulled up Cassidy's social media on my phone. She was active on Instagram, posting almost daily from her shifts at Harborview Medical Center, one of Seattle's top trauma hospitals. Photos of her in scrubs, tired but smiling. Motivational quotes, pictures of fancy coffee drinks she'd treat herself to after overnight shifts. Her last post was from 18 hours ago. A selfie in her scrubs, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Stethoscope around her neck. Genuine smile on her face. The caption read, "Night shift done. 3 more days until my favorite person comes to visit. Can't wait to make mom's cinnamon rolls with Papa. Number Christmas countdown number family first." The comments were full of heart emojis and well wishes from her coworkers and nursing school friends. But I noticed something. The comments had been disabled within the last hour. You could see where there had been dozens of replies. But now, there was just a notice. Comments on this post have been limited. Cassidy never limited comments. She loved engaging with people and loved the community she'd built online. Someone else had done this. Someone with access to her account. I clicked on her profile. No new posts, no stories, nothing. For someone who posted daily, this silence was deafening. I opened my Photos app, scrolling back to Thanksgiving last month when Cassidy and Trevor had driven down to visit me. There was a photo I'd taken of them on my porch. Cassidy laughing at something. Trevor's arm around her shoulders. I zoomed in on his face, studied it. What had I missed? A father respects his child's boundaries. A father trusts that his adult daughter can make her own choices, live her own life, handle her own problems. But a firefighter runs towards smoke. And I could smell smoke everywhere, in the wrong words of that text, in Olivia's too smooth lies, in the party sounds when there should have been silence, in the disabled comments, and the sudden radio silence from a daughter who'd been counting down the days until my arrival. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, pulled my old duffel bag from the closet. I'd learned long ago to keep an emergency go bag ready: clean clothes, toiletries, first aid kit, flashlight, multi-tool, rope, work gloves. The habits of a first responder never die. I added my phone charger, my wallet, the folding knife I'd carried since my first year on the job. It had a 4-inch blade, oak handle, worn smooth from decades of use. I'd used it to cut seatbelts, pry open doors, save lives. Tonight, I might need it again. My neighbor, Bill Peterson, owed me a favor. Last spring, I helped him rebuild his fence after a storm. I called him now, asked if I could borrow his truck. My old Ranger was reliable, but slow. And Bill's F-150 was newer, faster. "Everything okay, Robert?" Bill asked, concerned. He was a good man, retired postal worker, widower like me. "Family emergency," I said. "I need to get to Seattle, fast." "Keys are in the ignition," he said without hesitation. "Bring her back when you can. And Robert, be careful." I grabbed the duffel bag, took one last look at the cinnamon rolls I'd made with such hope just hours ago, and walked out into the snow. The drive to Seattle normally takes 3 hours. I made it in 2 and 15 minutes. The whole way, I kept my phone on the passenger seat, hoping it would ring, hoping I'd see Cassidy's name light up the screen, hoping she'd laugh and tell me it was all a misunderstanding, that she really had gone to Cabo on a whim, that I was being a paranoid old man. The phone never rang. Instead, as I crossed the Columbia River and the lights of Portland glowed in my rearview mirror, I thought about Helena, about the last conversation we'd had before she slipped into unconsciousness that final time. She'd been in hospice care at our home, her body ravaged by the cancer that had spread like wildfire despite every treatment, every prayer. It was 3 a.m. I was sleeping in the chair next to her bed. She'd squeezed my hand, barely any strength left, but enough to wake me. "Robert," she'd whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm here, love. I'm right here. Promise me something. Anything. Protect Cassidy from them." I'd been confused, exhausted, half asleep. From who, Helena? From them. The Brennans. Olivia. She's... Helena had struggled to breathe, struggled to form words. "She's dangerous. I saw something. She brought me my medicine tonight and..." But then the morphine pump had beeped, delivering another dose, and Helena had drifted away. She died 6 hours later without regaining consciousness. I thought it was the medication talking, the hallucinations that sometimes come at the end. Olivia had been kind during Helena's illness, had even donated to the hospice center in Helena's name. But now, driving through the darkness toward Seattle, toward my daughter, I wondered if Helena's last words hadn't been confusing at all. What if they'd been a warning? The suburbs of Seattle appeared like scattered jewels against the night street lights, house lights, the glow of shopping centers and gas stations. I followed my GPS to Bellevue, the upscale suburb where Cassidy and Trevor had bought their house 6 months ago. She'd been so proud, sending me photos of every room, the backyard, the kitchen where we'd make those cinnamon rolls together. It was a beautiful home in a neighborhood of beautiful homes, the kind of place where people kept their lawns perfect and their secrets hidden. I pulled onto Lakeview Drive at 12:47 a.m. The street was silent. Most houses were dark, their residents asleep. Here and there, Christmas lights twinkled, tasteful white lights on perfectly trimmed evergreens, wreaths on doors, the occasional illuminated reindeer. Cassidy's house was number 1247, a 2-story craftsman-style home with gray siding and white trim. I'd helped her and Trevor move in, had carried boxes up those front steps, had admired the built-in bookshelves and the kitchen island, and the master bedroom with the view of the Cascade Mountains. But tonight, the house looked different. Wrong. Most of it was dark, no Christmas lights, no wreath on the door, no festive decorations at all. Just darkness, and the curtains drawn tight on every window like closed eyes. But there was light coming from the living room on the first floor. A flickering, shifting glow that suggested movement inside. And parked in the driveway and along the curb were 3 vehicles that didn't belong to my daughter. A black Mercedes SUV with tinted windows, a silver Cadillac Escalade with custom rims, and a white Range Rover with dealer plates still attached. All expensive. All new. All parked carelessly, taking up space like they owned it. Cassidy's Prius was nowhere to be seen. I parked Bill's truck a few houses down, killed the engine, and sat in the darkness. My heart was pounding. My hands were steady. The Fire Academy had trained me for this. The moment before you breach a door, before you enter an unknown situation, before you commit to a course of action you can't take back. Assess, plan, execute. I got out of the truck quietly, closing the door with barely a click. The neighborhood was silent, except for the whisper of wind through the bare trees and the distant hum of traffic from the highway. I approached the house on foot, staying in the shadows. The living room curtains were drawn, but there was a gap, maybe half an inch, where they didn't quite meet. I moved to the window, pressed myself against the cold siding, and looked inside. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. The living room, Cassidy's carefully decorated living room, with the photos of her mother on the mantel and the books she'd collected since childhood, had been transformed into something else entirely. Olivia sat on the leather couch, the expensive one Cassidy and Trevor had saved for months to buy. She was wearing designer athleisure wear, yoga pants, and a cashmere hoodie, and her face had that frozen, Botoxed quality of someone who'd spent a lot of money trying to stop time. She was counting cash. Stacks of it, $100 bills in neat piles on the coffee table. Sitting across from her were 2 men I recognized from the wedding photos. Blake and Garrett, Trevor's brothers. Blake, the ex-football player, had gotten bigger, his shoulders straining against his tight black t-shirt, his neck thick with muscle that suggested steroids. Garrett, the younger one, was thin and twitchy, wearing expensive sneakers and a tech company hoodie, his leg bouncing nervously. But what made me grip the window frame hard enough to hurt my fingers wasn't the cash. It was what else was on that coffee table. Pill bottles. Dozens of them. Orange prescription bottles with white caps, scattered among the money like party favors, and a digital scale, and small Ziploc bags, and what looked like a pill press machine, a mechanical device used to manufacture tablets, sitting on the floor next to the couch. This wasn't a family gathering. This was a drug operation happening in my daughter's living room. I watched as Blake picked up one of the bottles, shook it, and laughed about something. Garrett was on his phone, texting rapidly. And Olivia kept counting, her manicured fingers moving through the bills with practiced efficiency. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read Olivia's lips as she looked up at her sons, smiled, and said something that included the words little nurse and basement. Basement. Cassidy's house had a basement. She'd talked about finishing it, turning it into a home gym or an office. My daughter, the nurse, was somewhere in this house while her mother-in-law and brothers-in-law ran a pharmaceutical operation in her living room. I stepped back from the window, my mind racing. I needed to think. I needed to plan. Charging in blind would get us both killed or worse. But before I could formulate a strategy, I heard it. Faint. Almost lost in the wind. But unmistakable. To someone who'd spent decades listening for signs of life in collapsed buildings. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, 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 Morse code. SOS. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The universal distress signal. It was coming from the back of the house, from below ground level, from the basement. When Cassidy was 9 years old, I taught her Morse code during a camping trip. She'd been fascinated by my stories from the fire department and wanted to know all our codes and signals. We'd practiced with flashlights in the tent, sending messages back and forth while Helena laughed at us from her sleeping bag. "Papa," she'd said, "if I'm ever in trouble, I'll use this. I'll tap SOS and you'll come find me. Right? Right, kiddo. I'll always come find you." Now, 20 years later, she was using that code. She was in the basement, she was in trouble, and she was calling for me. If you've ever ignored your gut and regretted it, hit subscribe. You'll understand why before this ends. I moved silently around the side of the house, keeping low, staying in the shadows. The back garden was accessible through a wooden gate that I lifted carefully, avoiding the squeaky hinges. My hands remembered how to move in the dark, how to be quiet, how to approach danger without announcing yourself. The backyard was enclosed by a 6-foot privacy fence, expensive cedar, well-maintained. There was a patio with outdoor furniture covered for winter, a dormant garden bed, and a set of concrete stairs leading down to a basement door. The tapping was coming from a small window at ground level, the kind of window that lets light into a basement. It had been covered from the inside, with what looked like cardboard and duct tape, a hasty job that violated every fire code I knew. I knelt beside the window, pressing my ear to the cold glass. The tapping stopped. Then I heard breathing. Ragged. Painful. On the other side of this window, inches away, was my daughter. "Cassidy," I whispered, barely audible. "It's Papa. I'm here." A sob, muffled, as if she was trying to stay quiet. Then her voice, so faint I had to strain to hear it. "Papa, they're going to kill me. They killed Mom. Papa, they killed Mom." Everything stopped. The world, my heart, time itself. Helena, my wife, dead for 2 years from cancer. Except, cancer doesn't kill you in one night. Cancer doesn't strike at 3 a.m. when an unexpected visitor brings your medicine. Olivia. She overdosed Mom's morphine, Cassidy whispered through the covered window. "I found the hospice records. The logs don't match. She gave Mom. She gave her a lethal dose. I confronted Trevor and he told his mother and..." Her voice broke into sobs. My hands were shaking now, not from the cold, from rage, from a fury so complete and absolute that it felt like another fire, one burning inside my chest, consuming everything except the need to get my daughter out of that basement and make the people who hurt her pay. But I couldn't let rage control me. Not now. I needed to be smart. "Are you hurt?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "My leg. They broke my leg. Papa, it's bad. I can't walk. I'm chained to the support beam. They've been drugging me, keeping me quiet. They're going to, they said tonight. On Christmas Eve, they're going to give me an overdose. Make it look like I stole drugs from the hospital." like I was an addict. Every word was a knife in my heart. "I'm going to get you out," I said. "I promise, but I need to see the basement. Can you pull the cardboard away from the window? Just a corner?" I heard movement, scraping. Then, a tiny triangle of the cardboard peeled back. And I saw my daughter's eye looking out at me. It was swollen, bruised. The white was bloodshot, but it was alert, focused. Cassidy wasn't broken. She was fighting. "That's my girl," I whispered. "I'm going to break this window. When I do, it'll make noise. I need you to be ready. Can you do that?" "Yes." I looked around the yard. Found what I needed, a decorative river rock from the garden bed. About the size of a baseball. I wrapped it in my jacket to muffle the sound. Positioned myself. And smashed the window. The glass broke with a muted crunch. I cleared the remaining shards quickly, creating an opening about 2 feet wide. "Papa, you can't fit through that," Cassidy said, her voice clearer now. "I don't need to fit. I need to see what we're dealing with." I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shined it through the window. The scene inside made me want to break down the entire house. The basement had been finished. Carpet, drywall, recessed lighting. But now, it looked like a prison cell. In the center of the room was a support beam, and chained to that beam by her ankle was my daughter. Cassidy was sitting on the cold concrete floor, wearing only a thin nightgown that was torn and filthy. Her left leg was bent at an unnatural angle below the knee, a fibula fracture from the look of it, the kind of injury that requires immediate medical attention. The ankle that was chained had rubbed raw, bleeding where the metal cut into her skin. Her face was a mess of bruises, her lips split, her dark hair matted with sweat and dirt. She'd lost weight. I could see her collarbones protruding, her arms thin, but her eyes... God. Her eyes were still fierce. Still my daughter. Next to her, out of reach, was a small, folding table. On it sat the tools of her planned murder. A spoon with burn marks underneath, a lighter, a bag of white powder, a tourniquet, and a syringe still in its packaging. They were going to inject her with drugs, make her an addict, or kill her outright, depending on the dose. Either way, her credibility would be destroyed, and anything she said about Olivia's operation would be dismissed as the ravings of a drug user. It was calculated, cold, evil. "How long?" I asked. 4 days. Since I found out about the pills. I was going to call the DEA. But Trevor saw my phone. They took it before I could send the message. "Where's Trevor now?" "Upstairs. He's the one who broke my leg, Papa, with a baseball bat. His own mother told him to do it." I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. To think. "The chain," I said. "What's it attached to?" "There's an eye bolt in the concrete. It's solid." I tried to pull it out, but I can't get leverage with my leg like this. I examined the window frame. The window itself was too small for Cassidy to fit through, even if I could somehow get the chain off. And I couldn't reach the eye bolt from outside. I needed to get into the basement through the door. "Is the basement door locked?" I asked. "Yes. Deadbolt from the outside. And even if you could get it open, they'd hear you." "Papa, there are 3 of them up there. Blake has a gun. I saw it yesterday when he came down to bring me water. A gun changed everything." I sat back on my heels, thinking. I had my knife, my phone, and the element of surprise. They didn't know I was here. They thought I was in Oregon, 3 hours away, accepting the rejection and spending Christmas alone. That was my advantage. "Cassidy," I said quietly, "I need you to trust me. I'm going to get you out, but it might take a few hours. I need to get help, but I need to do it smart. Can you hold on a little longer?" Her eye met mine through the window gap. "Papa, I'm scared." "I know, baby, I know. But you're the bravest person I've ever known. You're your mother's daughter." And she didn't raise a quitter. Cassidy smiled, a broken, painful smile, but real. "Neither did you." That's right. Now I'm going to put this cardboard back so they don't see the windows broken. I'm going to be quiet. They won't know I'm here. But I'm not leaving. Do you understand? I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. I carefully taped the cardboard back over the window, leaving it just loose enough that I could pull it away again if needed. Then, I moved back into the shadows of the yard, pulled out my phone, and faced the hardest decision of the night. Call 911? No. Cassidy had told the local police. And in suburbs like this, response times could be 10 to 15 minutes. Blake was armed. By the time police arrived, Cassidy could be dead, and Olivia could have a dozen lawyers claiming this was all a misunderstanding. I needed someone I could trust. Someone who understood how deep corruption could go. Someone with the authority to override local jurisdictions. I scrolled through my contacts, found the name I was looking for, and pressed call. It rang 3 times. Then a groggy voice answered. This better be life or death, Robert. It is, Martin. It's both. Martin Hayes and I had served together in the Seattle Fire Department for 20 years before he'd retired and gone into politics. Now he was a city councilman with connections throughout the state, a man who'd earned his reputation by refusing to play the usual games, by fighting for accountability and transparency. He was also one of the few black men I knew who'd navigated the system without compromising his integrity, who'd faced down corruption and racism and come out stronger. We'd stayed friends long after we'd both left the department. Talk to me, Martin said, suddenly alert. I told him everything. The text, the phone call, Olivia's lies, what I'd found in the house, what Cassidy had told me about Helena's death. When I finished, there was a long silence. Robert, Martin finally said, his voice tight. Are you telling me that Olivia Brennan murdered your wife and is now trying to murder your daughter? Yes. And you think this is connected to a pharmaceutical operation? I know it is. I saw the pills. Martin. The press machine. The cash. This isn't small time. This is organized. Another pause. Then, I'm calling someone. Federal agent I know. DEA. She owes me a favor, and she's not compromised by local politics. Her name is Priya Sundar. But Robert, it's going to take time for her to mobilize. An hour, maybe 2. Can you stay hidden that long? I looked at the house, at the window where my daughter was chained. I'll do what I have to do, I said. Robert, don't do anything stupid. Don't be a hero. Wait for. The back door of the house opened. Light spilled out onto the patio. A silhouette appeared. Massive shoulders, thick neck. Blake. He was carrying something. A bag. He walked down the patio steps, toward the basement entrance. Not 10 feet from where I was crouched in the shadows. Martin, I have to go, I whispered. Robert, don't. I ended the call, silenced my phone, and pressed myself against the fence. Blake hadn't seen me. He was focused on the basement door, fishing keys out of his pocket. He was humming something a Christmas carol, ironically. Deck the halls. He unlocked the deadbolt, pushed the door open, and descended the stairs. I heard Cassidy's voice, terrified. No. Please. Not yet. You said Christmas Eve. It's still the 23rd. You promised. Change of plans, little nurse. Blake's voice rumbled. Mom wants this done tonight. Too risky keeping you alive any longer. Your old man might actually show up. And we can't have that. I moved without thinking. I'd spent 4 decades carrying people out of burning buildings, out of car wrecks, out of places where death was waiting. I knew how to move fast, how to use momentum and leverage to overcome size and strength. Blake was bigger than me, younger, probably outweighed me by 80 pounds of muscle, but I had surprise. And I had 40 years of fighting fires and saving lives and refusing to accept that anything was impossible. I slipped through the basement door behind him before it could close, staying in the shadows at the top of the stairs. Blake was in the basement now, approaching Cassidy. In his hand was the syringe from the table, now filled with clear liquid. This won't hurt much, he was saying. Just a little pinch. then you go to sleep. Just like your mom did. Olivia's real good at this, you know. She's put down 3 people with accidental overdoses. You're number 4. Cassidy was crying, trying to crawl backward, but the chain stopped her. Blake knelt down, grabbing her arm. That's when I descended. The stairs were concrete, 12 steps. I took them in 4 strides, my work boots making no sound because I knew how to place my feet, how to distribute weight. Blake heard me at the last second and started to turn. Too late. I hit him like a freight train. All my weight and velocity focused into my shoulder, targeting his center of mass. The same technique I'd used to break down doors, to move debris, to do the impossible when lives were at stake. Blake stumbled forward, the syringe flying from his hand, clattering across the floor. He caught himself on the support beam, turned, and his face went from confusion to rage in an instant. "You," he snarled. He swung at me, a haymaker punch that would have taken my head off if it connected. It didn't. I'd been in firefights before, the kind with fists, not flames. Drunks we'd pulled from burning apartments, people high on meth who thought we were demons, domestic abusers who didn't want us rescuing their victims. I knew how to fight. I ducked under his swing, came up inside his guard, and drove my knee into his groin with everything I had. Blake's eyes went wide. He doubled over, gasping. I grabbed the back of his head and slammed it into the support beam. Once, twice. On the third impact, he went limp. He collapsed to the floor like a felled tree, blood running from a gash on his forehead. I stood over him, panting, my ribs screaming where I'd cracked one in the fall through the window. My hands were shaking from adrenaline. "Papa," Cassidy whispered. I turned to her, and the relief on her face nearly broke me. "I told you I'd come," I said, kneeling beside her. "I'll always come." I pulled out my knife, cut through the zip ties on her wrists that I hadn't seen from outside. Then examined the chain. It was thick, industrial grade. The padlock securing it was quality, not something I could pick or break with the tools I had. But the eye bolt, I looked at where it was set into the concrete floor. It was solid, but the concrete around it looked newer than the rest of the floor, recently installed. "Move back as far as you can," I told Cassidy. She dragged herself backward, wincing in pain. I grabbed the chain close to the eye bolt, planted my feet, and pulled with every ounce of strength I had. My back screamed, my shoulders burned, my hands, already cut from the window glass, bled onto the chain. The eye bolt didn't budge. I repositioned, tried again. Nothing. Blake groaned on the floor, starting to regain consciousness. I looked around desperately. Saw the table, the pill press machine. It was metal, heavy, about 20 pounds. I grabbed it, lifted it over my head, and brought it down on the concrete, around the eye bolt, with all my strength. The impact sent shockwaves up my arms. A chunk of concrete cracked. I hit it again. Again. On the 5th strike, the eye bolt shifted. On the 7th, it pulled free from the floor, bringing a fist-sized chunk of concrete with it. "Got it," I gasped. The chain was still locked around Cassidy's ankle, but she was no longer tethered to the floor. I scooped her up, all 120 pounds of her, broken leg and all, holding her the way I'd carried her when she was a little girl, when she'd fallen asleep on car rides and I'd carried her to bed. "Papa, your ribs. Don't care. Hold on to me." She wrapped her arms around my neck. I turned toward the stairs and froze. Standing at the top of the stairs, blocking our exit, was Olivia. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood Trevor, my son-in-law, holding a small black pistol, not pointed at me, pointed at Cassidy. "You should have stayed in Oregon, Robert," Olivia said calmly. "You should have accepted that text and spent Christmas alone. Now, we have a problem." My daughter trembled in my arms. I looked at Trevor, this man I'd welcomed into our family, who'd stood at the altar and promised to love and protect my daughter, and saw nothing in his eyes. No regret, no hesitation, just a cold calculation. "Put her down," Trevor said. "Put her down and step back, or I swear to God I'll shoot her right here." "You think I won't?" "I broke her leg, old man. Pulling a trigger is easy. Behind me, Blake was stirring, pushing himself up. I was trapped in the basement, surrounded, holding my injured daughter, facing a man with a gun who'd already proven he was willing to hurt her. For the first time in 40 years, I didn't know how to save someone. But I knew one thing. I wasn't putting my daughter down. Not for anyone. Not ever. No, I said simply. Trevor's hand tightened on the gun. I'm not bluffing. Then the entire house filled with the sound of shattering glass. The house looked perfect. That's what scared me most. The sound that saved our lives came from the living room, above the unmistakable crash of the front door being breached, followed by shouted commands in that particular tone that only law enforcement uses. Authoritative, aggressive, designed to freeze people in compliance. Federal agents, search warrant. Hands where we can see them. Down on the ground, now. 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 Trevor's head snapped toward the stairs, his gun wavering. That half-second of distraction was all I needed. I twisted, putting my body between Cassidy and the gun, and lunged toward the corner of the basement where a stack of storage boxes created a makeshift barrier. We hit the ground hard. I took the impact on my shoulder, protecting Cassidy's broken leg as much as I could. She screamed in pain anyway. The sound tore through me worse than any physical injury I'd ever sustained. Above us, chaos. Footsteps thundered across the floors. The furniture crashed. Voices overlapped. Clear. Basement door. Suspects fleeing. Trevor made his choice. Instead of firing, instead of standing his ground, he ran. I heard his footsteps retreating up the stairs, and I heard Olivia's voice saying something sharp and urgent that I couldn't make out. Blake, still groggy from the head trauma, tried to stand. Got halfway up before a woman's voice barked from the top of the basement stairs. Federal agent. You on the floor. Face down. Hands behind your head, or I will drop you. Blake looked at the stairs, then at me and Cassidy huddled in the corner. Whatever he saw in my eyes, probably the promise that if he took one step toward my daughter, I would kill him with my bare hands, made his decision for him. He dropped to his stomach, hands behind his head. 2 agents in tactical gear descended the stairs, weapons drawn, moving with practiced efficiency. The first was a woman, Indian or Pakistani, mid-40s, with sharp eyes that took in the entire scene in a heartbeat. Blake on the floor, the broken eye bolt, the drug paraphernalia on the table, Cassidy's injuries, the chain still locked around her ankle. Medical, she shouted up the stairs. Then to me, Are you Robert Chen? Yes. Martin Hayes called me. I'm DEA Special Agent Priya Sundar. You're safe now. Both of you. Cassidy collapsed against me, sobbing. Not from pain anymore, but from relief so profound it manifested as tears she'd been holding back for 4 days of hell. I held her, rocking slightly, whispering the same words I'd said when she was little and woke up from nightmares. It's okay, baby. Papa's got you. You're safe now. I've got you. Agent Sundar holstered her weapon and approached carefully, her partner keeping his gun trained on Blake. She knelt beside us, her expression shifting from professional to something softer when she saw Cassidy's leg up close. Jesus, she muttered. Then louder, where the hell is that medical team? Footsteps on the stairs. Paramedics descended with equipment. A backboard, medical bag, portable oxygen. I recognized the calm efficiency, the way they assessed and triaged. I'd worked alongside people like this for 4 decades. Sir, I need you to let her go so we can stabilize her, one of the paramedics said gently. Young guy, couldn't have been more than 25. I didn't want to let go. Every instinct screamed at me to hold on to my daughter, to keep her close, to not trust anyone else with her safety. But Cassidy touched my face. Papa, let them help. I'm okay. You saved me. I loosened my grip, let them ease her onto the backboard. She gasped when they moved her leg. Even with all their care, they started an IV, checked her vitals, and splinted the fracture. Possible fibular fracture. Definitely needs imaging, the lead paramedic said into his radio. Signs of dehydration, malnutrition. Contusions and lacerations consistent with physical assault. Patient is conscious and alert. We're bringing her up. Agent Sundar's partner hauled Blake to his feet, cuffed him, and read him his rights in a monotone that suggested he'd done this 1,000 times. I stood on shaking legs, my cracked rib making each breath painful. "Mr. Chen," Agent Sundar said, "I need to ask you some questions. But first, are you injured?" "Doesn't matter. It matters to me. You're bleeding." I looked down. My hands were cut from the window glass and the chain. My jacket was torn. I probably looked like I'd been through a war. I felt like it too. "Later," I said. "Where's Trevor? Where's Olivia? Where's the other brother, Garrett?" Agent Sundar's jaw tightened. "Trevor Brennan attempted to flee through the back door. He's in custody. Garrett Brennan was apprehended in the living room, attempting to destroy evidence, specifically trying to smash a laptop. Also in custody. And Olivia?" A pause. Something flickered across Sundar's face. "Olivia Brennan is upstairs. She lawyered up immediately. She has Clayton Morse with her." The name meant nothing to me. Who? One of the most expensive defense attorneys in the Pacific Northwest. He was here within 20 minutes of our arrival. Which means she either had him on standby, or she called him before we even breached the door. That cold, calculating intelligence. Olivia had known this could happen, had planned for it, had money and connections and a lawyer who could protect her while my daughter had been chained in a basement. I felt the rage building again, hot and dangerous. "I want to see her," I said. "That's not a good idea, Mr. Chen. I want to see the woman who killed my wife and tortured my daughter." Agent Sundar studied me. Something in my voice must have convinced her that I wasn't going to take no for an answer, because she sighed and said, "5 minutes. You observe only. You don't speak. You don't approach. You don't do anything that gives her lawyers ammunition. Understood?" "Understood." We climbed the stairs, me moving slowly because of the ribs, Sundar staying close, like she was afraid I might do something stupid. The basement door opened onto the kitchen. Cassidy's beautiful kitchen, with the farmhouse sink she'd picked out and the subway tile backsplash she'd installed herself, was now a crime scene. Evidence markers sat on the counter next to the pill press machine I'd seen through the window. More agents were photographing everything, cataloging, building a case. Through the kitchen to the living room. The front door hung off its hinges where the tactical team had breached it. The leather couch where Olivia had been counting money now had evidence bags scattered across it. Pills, cash, scales, all being inventoried. And sitting in the armchair near the fireplace, looking calm and composed as if she were hosting a book club meeting, was Olivia Brennan. She'd changed clothes. No longer in the athleisure wear I'd seen through the window, she now wore a cream-colored sweater and slacks. Pearls at her throat. Her silver hair was perfect. Her makeup was unsmudged. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a murderer. Sitting next to her, equally composed, was a man in a 3-piece suit. Clayton Morse, I assumed. 60s, silver-haired like Olivia, with the kind of face that suggested he spent most of his time in courtrooms where his words shaped reality. An agent was trying to question Olivia. She was staring past him, saying nothing, while Morse occasionally interjected. "My client declines to answer. My client asserts her Fifth Amendment rights. My client will not be responding to that question." Olivia's eyes tracked across the room and landed on me. She smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a guilty smile. A knowing smile. The kind that suggested she was already 3 steps ahead, already calculating her next move. She leaned over to Morse, whispered something. He nodded, then addressed Agent Sundar. "My client would like to make a statement for the record." Sundar tensed. "She's waiving her right to silence? Only for this statement. And only in response to Mr. Chen's presence." The room went quiet. Every agent stopped what they were doing, listening. Olivia looked directly at me. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Robert, I want you to know that I'm sorry. Sorry that it came to this. Sorry that Cassidy forced our hand by being so inflexible. She's very much like her mother in that way. Helena was inflexible too. The mention of my wife's name from this woman's lips made my hands clench into fists. Olivia continued. Helena was suffering terribly at the end. The cancer was everywhere. The pain was unbearable. I did her a kindness. Really. I ended her suffering. She should thank me if there's an afterlife. Don't, Agent Sundar said sharply, grabbing my arm. She'd seen me move before. I'd fully registered that I was moving, that I was taking a step toward Olivia, with violence in my heart. Morse stood smoothly. Agent Sundar, if you cannot control the emotional civilian in this room, I'll have to insist he be removed. Mr. Chen is the victim's father, Sundar said, her voice hard. And, Miss Brennan, if you're confessing to— My client was speaking hypothetically, Morse interrupted. About end-of-life care in general. She made no admission of any criminal act. Olivia's smile widened slightly. Of course. Hypothetically. Though I will say this. Robert, you'll never prove anything. The hospice records were sealed. The morphine pump was returned to the manufacturer. There's no evidence because there's nothing to find. Helena's death was natural. The cancer killed her, not me. That's enough, Sundar said. Miss Brennan, you need to. And Cassidy, Olivia continued. As if Sundar hadn't spoken. Sweet, stubborn Cassidy. She should have minded her own business. Should have accepted what we offered her, a good life. Money. Security. Instead, she had to play detective, had to threaten us, had to force Trevor to make difficult choices. You're talking about assaulting and imprisoning your daughter-in-law, I said, my voice shaking. You're talking about planning to murder her. Morse cut in. My client has made no such admission. Everything she said is speculation or opinion. Furthermore, whatever happened in this house, my client was not the primary actor. At most, she was a bystander to events involving her sons and her late husband's troubled youngest child, Trevor, who has a documented history of behavioral issues that my client has tried, unsuccessfully, to manage. She was setting up to throw Trevor under the bus, to paint herself as the innocent matriarch misled by her troubled son. Agent Sundar saw it too. Ma'am, if you continue talking, you're going to— I'm not saying another word, Olivia said, settling back in her chair. Except this. Merry Christmas, Robert. I hope you and Cassidy enjoy what time you have left together. Because when my lawyers are done, your daughter will be the one facing charges, theft of controlled substances from Harborview Medical Center, making false accusations, perhaps even assaulting poor Blake in that basement. I'm sure we can find evidence of all of it. The threat was clear. She was going to twist this, use her money and lawyers and connections to make Cassidy the criminal. Before I could respond, before I could move, before I could do anything I'd regret, Agent Sundar pulled me toward the kitchen. Outside, she said quietly. Now, before you give Morse exactly what he wants, evidence of witness intimidation or assault. She was right. I let her guide me out through the broken front door onto the lawn, where more agents were loading Blake and Garrett into separate vehicles. Trevor was already gone, transported to federal holding. The neighbors were awake now. Lights on in houses up and down the street. People standing on porches in robes and pajamas. Phones out, recording everything. An ambulance was parked in the driveway. Through the open back doors, I could see Cassidy on the gurney, the paramedics working. She saw me and reached out her hand. I went to her, climbed into the ambulance, took her hand in both of mine. Papa, she said, her voice muzzy from the pain medication they'd given her. Did they catch them? Did they catch all of them? Yes, baby, all of them. Even Olivia? I hesitated. She's here, but she has lawyers. Cassidy's eyes focused, sharpened despite the drugs. Papa, in my car, the Prius. It's parked 3 blocks away on Maple Street. They made me hide it so it would look like I wasn't home. Okay, we'll get your car. No. Listen. In the glove compartment, there's a USB drive. Red. It has everything. Videos from my badge cam at work, spreadsheets, photos, audio recordings, everything I collected over 3 months. My heart skipped. You've been investigating them for 3 months? Since September, since I noticed the discrepancies in the hospital's narcotics inventory, since I followed Trevor to one of Olivia's pain clinics and saw what they were really doing. I documented everything, Papa, and I made backups. One copy I mailed to the state pharmacy board 2 weeks ago, one I gave to my friend Natalie at work. She doesn't know what's on it, just that it's important, and one is in my car. My brilliant, brave daughter. She hadn't just stumbled into this. She'd been building a case, gathering evidence, preparing for exactly this moment. The pharmacy board, I said. Have they? I don't know. I haven't heard from them. But if they opened the package, they should be investigating by now. Agent Sundar appeared at the ambulance doors. She'd been listening. What's on this USB drive? She asked Cassidy. Cassidy met her eyes. Proof that Olivia Brennan, Trevor Brennan, Blake Brennan, and Garrett Brennan have been operating a pill mill scheme. They steal oxycodone and fentanyl from Harborview Medical Center. Using Trevor's access, he'd come have lunch with me, distract me, and clone my credentials. Then they press counterfeit pills at Olivia's pain clinics and sell them. The clinics write fake prescriptions for patients who don't exist or who are already dead. Sundar's expression turned sharp, predatory. How much money are we talking about? Based on the numbers I saw, at least $4 million over the last 2 years. Maybe more. $4 million. That was the value Olivia had placed on my wife's life, on my daughter's life. That was the amount of money worth killing for. Mr. Chen, Sundar said, where exactly on Maple Street is your daughter's car? I'll show you. Comment below if you'd have done what comes next. I need to know I'm not crazy. I've pulled bodies from burning buildings. I thought I'd seen hell. I was wrong. Finding the Prius took 15 minutes. Cassidy's description was exact: 3 blocks west, parked under a streetlight near a small neighborhood park. The little hybrid sat there, innocent and ordinary, covered in a light dusting of snow. Agent Sundar brought a technical specialist with her, a young woman named Kim who had tools that could open a car without setting off alarms. Within 2 minutes, we were inside. The glove compartment opened to reveal registration papers, an insurance card, a small first aid kit, and tucked underneath everything else, a red USB drive the size of my thumb. Kim bagged it as evidence, but not before Sundar made a call to her supervisor requesting immediate authorization to access the contents. Federal investigations move slowly, by nature warrants and procedures and chains of custody. But Sundar seemed to understand that speed mattered here. If what Cassidy says is on this drive, we have enough to hold all 4 Brennans without bail, Sundar said as we drove back to Cassidy's house. But I need you to prepare yourself, Robert. Olivia was right about one thing. She has resources. Clayton Morse is going to fight this with everything he has. Even with evidence, this could take months or years to prosecute. I don't care how long it takes. She'll be safe. We're placing her in protective custody until trial. And Sundar hesitated. Robert, your daughter told the paramedics she's 8 weeks pregnant. The world tilted. I'd heard Cassidy whisper it in the basement. But in the chaos that followed, I hadn't fully processed it. My daughter was carrying a child, my grandchild, Trevor's child. Does she want to keep it? I asked quietly. She didn't say. That's her decision to make, but it complicates things. If Trevor is convicted, he could be facing 25 years or more. That baby would grow up without a father. That baby will grow up with a grandfather, I said firmly. And a mother who's the strongest person I know. That's more than enough. We returned to find the house fully processed as a crime scene. Cassidy had already been transported to Harborview Medical Center, her workplace, ironically, where doctors who knew her would treat her injuries. Agent Sundar's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression shifted from professional neutrality to something like satisfaction. That was the state pharmacy board, she said when she hung up. They received Cassidy's package 2 weeks ago and opened an investigation. They were planning to raid Olivia's pain clinics tomorrow morning, Christmas Eve. They've been coordinating with DEA for the last week, building a multi-jurisdictional case. So Cassidy's evidence was already working, I said. More than that. The pharmacy board pulled controlled substance dispensing records for all 3 of Olivia's clinics. They found over 200 prescriptions written for deceased patients and another 500 plus written for people who don't exist, stolen identities. And the security footage Cassidy provided from Harborview shows Trevor entering the pharmaceutical supply room on 17 separate occasions over the last 6 months. 17 times. 17 times my son-in-law had betrayed his wife's trust. Stolen from her workplace. Put her career at risk. There's more, Sundar continued. We checked the laptop Garrett was trying to destroy. He's an amateur, didn't even use encryption. We found spreadsheets detailing every transaction, every sale, dates and amounts, and buyer information. And messages between him, Blake, Trevor, and Olivia, planning what to do about the Cassidy problem. She showed me her phone. On the screen was a text message thread. Olivia. She knows too much. We can't reason with her anymore. Trevor. She's my wife. There has to be another way. Olivia. Your wife is going to destroy this family. Unless you want to spend Christmas in federal prison, you'll do what needs to be done. Trevor. Fine. I'll handle it. Blake. I'll help. Little nurse needs to learn some respect. The timestamps showed this conversation happened 4 days ago, right before they'd imprisoned Cassidy. Looking at those messages, seeing the casual way they discussed hurting my daughter, I felt something break inside me. Not my resolve, not my strength, but the last small part of me that had hoped this was somehow a misunderstanding, that Trevor had been coerced, that he'd felt any guilt at all. He hadn't. He'd chosen his mother's money over his wife's life. Mr. Chen, Sundar said gently, I know this is overwhelming. I know you want to be with Cassidy. We can continue this conversation tomorrow. You should go to the hospital. She was right. Everything else could wait. Martin Hayes met me at Harborview Medical Center. He was in the emergency department waiting room when I arrived, still in the casual clothes he'd clearly thrown on when I called him in the middle of the night. He stood when he saw me, and without a word, pulled me into a hug. I hadn't cried when I found Cassidy chained in that basement. Hadn't cried when I fought Blake. Hadn't cried through any of it because I couldn't afford to break down, couldn't afford to be anything less than strong. But standing there in that sterile hospital waiting room, held by my old friend, the man who'd saved us by calling in federal help, I finally let it out. She's alive, I said into Martin's shoulder. She's alive because of you. No, Martin said firmly. She's alive because her father is the most stubborn, brave, reckless man I know. You should have waited for the feds, Robert. You should have called me before you went in that house. If I'd waited, she'd be dead. He pulled back, looked at me. I know. That's why I'm not mad. Just, don't do it again. I managed a weak laugh. I'll try. A doctor approached, young, Indian, with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Dr. Patel. Yes, she's asking for you. She'll need pins and possibly a plate, but she should make a full recovery. The malnutrition and dehydration are responding well to fluids and nutrition. The contusions and lacerations are superficial. And the baby? Doctor. Patel's expression softened. Fetus is measuring 8 weeks and 3 days. Heartbeat is strong. No signs of distress. She's been asking about that too. Whether the trauma affected the pregnancy, I told her everything looks good so far, but we'll monitor closely. Relief flooded through me so powerfully I had to sit down. Can I see her? I asked. Room 437. She's on the 4th floor. I found Cassidy in a private room, her leg elevated and splinted, IV lines running into both arms, monitors beeping steadily. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. When I entered, her head turned and her face crumpled. Papa? I went to her, took her hand, kissed her forehead. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I should have told you what was happening. Should have called you when I first found out about the pills, but I thought I could handle it myself. I thought if I just gathered enough evidence, I could go to the authorities, and they'd arrest them, and it would be over. I didn't think they'd— Stop, I said gently. You have nothing to apologize for. You did everything right. You were brave and smart, and you built a case that's going to put them all in prison. Trevor broke my leg, Papa. My husband, the man I loved, took a baseball bat and broke my leg because his mother told him to, and I'm carrying his baby. She looked at her stomach, still flat, where an 8-week fetus was growing. What am I going to do? She whispered. I sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle her injuries. You're going to make whatever decision is right for you. If you want to keep this baby, I will be there every single day to help you raise it. If you choose not to, I will support that too. This is your choice, Cassidy. Yours alone. And whatever you decide, I love you, and I'm proud of you. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to keep it. Is that crazy? After everything Trevor did, I still want this baby. It's not crazy. That baby is part of you. And you're going to be an amazing mother, just like Helena was. At the mention of her mother, Cassidy's tears came harder. Papa, I have to tell you something. About Mom. I know, I said quietly. You told me in the basement. About the morphine. About what Olivia did. It's worse than that. I've been reviewing the hospice records since I got suspicious about Olivia's operation. Mom's cancer was bad, but she wasn't dying that night. The latest scan showed the tumors had actually shrunk a little. Dr. Morrison was optimistic. He thought Mom might have another 6 months, maybe a year. The room spun. What? Olivia killed her. Papa murdered her. Because Mom found out about the pill operation. I think Mom saw something when Olivia visited the hospice. Maybe saw Olivia taking pills from the supply cabinet. And Olivia couldn't risk Mom telling anyone. I thought back to that last conversation with Helena. Asterisk, protect Cassidy from them. The Brennans. Olivia. She's dangerous. Asterisk. She'd been trying to warn me, and I'd been too grief-stricken to hear it. Can we prove it? I asked. Can we prove Olivia killed your mother? Cassidy shook her head. The morphine pump was returned to the manufacturer after Mom died. Standard protocol. And the hospice digital records were updated after the fact. Someone with administrator access changed the dosing logs. But I have screenshots of the original logs I took months ago when I first started investigating. They show the discrepancy. Is that enough? I don't know. Maybe. Agent Sundar said they're going to bring in the FBI's cybercrime unit to examine the hospice's systems. If they can prove the logs were altered, and if they can trace the alterations to Olivia or someone working for her. She trailed off, exhausted. Rest now, I said. We'll worry about the legal stuff later. Right now, you need surgery and healing. But Cassidy gripped my hand tighter. Papa, there's something else. About the baby. I need to tell you before the surgery, in case something happens. Nothing is going to happen, Dr. Patel said. Just let me say this, please. I nodded. I'm going to name the baby Eleanor. If it's a girl, Eleanor Helena Chen. If it's a boy, Elliot Henry Chen. After Mom, and after you, Robert Henry Chen. I want this baby to know where they come from, to know that they're part of a family that values truth and justice and love, not money and drugs and violence. My throat closed up. Those are perfect names. And Papa, I'm going to file for divorce. Agent Sundar said it might complicate the criminal case because I'm technically married to one of the defendants, but I don't care. I need to be free of Trevor. I need my baby to have my name, not his. I understand, and I support you. One more thing. Anything, baby. When this is over, when the trial is done and they're all in prison, I want to move back to Oregon. Back near you. I don't want to raise my child in the city. I want them to grow up like I did around trees and rivers and wood smoke, around their grandfather's cinnamon rolls and campfire stories. I want them to be safe. I couldn't speak, could only nod and squeeze her hand and try not to break down again. A nurse entered. "Miss Brennan, it's time to prep you for surgery." I stood to leave, but Cassidy pulled me back one more time. "Papa, thank you for coming. Thank you for not listening when I told you to stay away. Thank you for being the kind of father who runs into burning buildings." "Always," I said. "I'll always run toward you when you need me." They wheeled her away toward the surgical wing. Staring at the place where my daughter had been, thinking about everything we'd lost and everything we'd survived. Martin found me there 20 minutes later. "Coffee?" he offered, holding out a styrofoam cup. I took it gratefully. The coffee was terrible, weak, and bitter, but it was hot and real. "Agent Sundar called," Martin said. "The USB drive Cassidy made has over 200 files on it. Videos, audio recordings, photos, spreadsheets. It's a prosecutor's dream," she said with this evidence, combined with what they found in the house and on Garrett's laptop. They can charge all 4 Brennans with drug trafficking, money laundering, assault, kidnapping, and attempted murder. "What about Helena? What about murder?" Martin's expression darkened. "That's harder. The circumstantial evidence is strong, but without the morphine pump and without the original digital logs, a good defense attorney and Olivia has the best can create reasonable doubt. They're going to try, Robert. The FBI is sending a forensic team to examine the hospice's computer systems. If they can prove the logs were altered and trace it back to Olivia, they might be able to bring charges." Might. Yeah, might. I drank the terrible coffee and stared out the window at the Seattle skyline. Dawn was coming, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Christmas Eve morning, the day Olivia had planned to murder my daughter. Instead, my daughter was in surgery, pregnant and brave. And Olivia was in federal custody, her empire crumbling. Justice, I was learning, doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Sometimes it's not clean or complete or satisfying. Sometimes the villains hire expensive lawyers and fight back and make you work for every inch of accountability. But justice is still worth fighting for. "Martin," I said, "I need a favor." "Name it." "I need you to help me find the best family law attorney in Washington state. Cassidy's going to need help with the divorce, with custody arrangements if Trevor tries to claim parental rights from prison, with protecting her and the baby." "Already on it," Martin said. "I called my cousin Priya, not Agent Sundar. Different Priya, she's a family law attorney in Seattle. She said she'll take Cassidy's case pro bono." "Thank you." "And Robert? There's something else you should know. The hospital administrator is here. She wants to talk to you about Cassidy's employment status." My stomach dropped. "They're firing her?" "I don't think so. Just come talk to her." We walked to a small conference room where a woman in her 50s waited, wearing a business suit despite the early hour. She introduced herself as Margaret Chen. "No relation," she clarified. "Just a coincidence." "Mr. Chen," she said, "I want to start by saying that Harborview Medical Center is horrified by what happened to Cassidy. We had no idea that Trevor Brennan was using his access to our facility to commit theft. We're conducting a full internal investigation to determine how he was able to bypass our security protocols." "Okay," I said cautiously. "Cassidy Brennan is one of our best nurses. Her performance reviews are exemplary. Her patients love her. Her colleagues respect her. And apparently, she's been conducting her own investigation into pharmaceutical theft for months. An investigation that has helped us identify significant security vulnerabilities." I waited, not sure where this was going. Margaret continued, "We want to offer Cassidy administrative leave with full pay for as long as she needs to recover. And when she's ready to return to work, if she chooses to return to work, we'd like to offer her a position in our quality assurance department. It would be a promotion, with better hours, less physical strain, and a significant raise." She's demonstrated exactly the kind of attention to detail and ethical courage we need in that role. Relief washed through me. Thank you. That means a lot. It's the least we can do. And Mr. Chen? I reviewed Cassidy's mother's hospice records, personally, after Agent Sunder contacted us. There are indeed discrepancies in the medication logs. I've referred the matter to our legal department and to the Washington State Department of Health. If there was wrongdoing, we will cooperate fully with any investigation. Another piece falling into place. Another door opening toward justice for Helena. When Cassidy wakes up from surgery, I'll tell her, I said. She'll appreciate that. Margaret stood to leave, then paused. Mr. Chen, I lost my own mother last year. Cancer, like your wife. I know what it's like to wonder if you did enough, if you could have saved her. Tell Cassidy that what she did exposing these criminals has probably saved dozens or hundreds of lives. People who won't become addicted to counterfeit pills. People who won't overdose. She's a hero. After Margaret left, Martin and I sat in that conference room in silence. You raised a good one, Martin finally said. Helena and I both did, I corrected. I just wish she was here to see how strong Cassidy turned out to be. I think she knows. Maybe she did. Maybe somewhere, Helena was watching. Maybe she was proud. Maybe she was finally at peace, knowing that her daughter was safe and her killers would face justice. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking from a tired old man who'd spent the last 12 hours running on adrenaline and coffee. Either way, I chose to believe it. Asterisk. If this story moved you, subscribe to hear more. The next part proves why justice is worth every fight. Asterisk. Number. Asterisk. Asterisk. Chapter 4. The Protector's Gambit. Asterisk. 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 The gun didn't fire. Sometimes, miracles wear polyester. Cassidy's surgery took 3 hours. They set the fibular fracture with 2 titanium pins and a small plate. Repaired the damaged ligaments in her ankle, where the chain had cut through, and cleaned and closed all her lacerations. Dr. Patel found me in the waiting room just after noon. She's in recovery. Everything went perfectly. She'll be uncomfortable for a few days, but she's young and healthy. She'll heal. And the baby? Still strong. We monitored fetal heart tones throughout the procedure. No distress. She's lucky, Mr. Chen. Very lucky. Lucky seemed like the wrong word for someone who'd been tortured and nearly murdered, but I understood what he meant. Cassidy had survived. That was its own kind of luck. They moved her to a private room on the secure ward. Agent Sunder had arranged for hospital security to limit access, and there was a federal marshal stationed outside her door. Paranoid, maybe, but I wasn't taking any chances. I spent the afternoon at Cassidy's bedside, while she drifted in and out of consciousness, the anesthesia slowly wearing off. Every time she woke, she'd reach for my hand to make sure I was still there. Still here, baby, I'd say. I'm not going anywhere. Around 3 p.m., Agent Sundar arrived with updates. All 4 Brennans have been formally charged, she said, sitting in the chair on the other side of Cassidy's bed. Trevor, Blake, and Garrett are in federal holding. Olivia made bail. My head snapped up. What? Her attorney argued she's not a flight risk because of her community ties and her age. The judge set bail at $2 million. She posted it within an hour. Rage, hot and sharp, flooded through me. She's under house arrest with an ankle monitor. She can't leave King County. She can't contact any of the other defendants or any witnesses, including Cassidy or you. If she violates any conditions of her release, she goes straight to jail with no bail option. That's not good enough. I know, but that's how the system works sometimes, Mr. Chen. Rich defendants can afford bail. The rest can't. It's not fair. But it's legal. I wanted to argue, wanted to rage at the injustice of it. But what would that accomplish? Olivia was out on bail. Yes, but she was charged with serious federal crimes. Even the best lawyers couldn't make that disappear. What happens next? I asked, forcing myself to focus on the process. Arraignment is set for December 30th. All 4 defendants will appear before Judge Patricia Morales in federal court. The prosecution will present evidence, the defense will enter pleas, and will set a trial date. Based on the complexity of the case and the amount of evidence, trial probably won't start until late spring or early summer. 6 months, maybe more. 6 months of waiting, of reliving this trauma every time we had to give statements or review evidence or prepare for testimony. But 6 months also meant 6 months for Cassidy to heal, to divorce Trevor, to prepare for motherhood. What do you need from us? I asked. Statements, eventually, but not today. Today, you both should rest. Tomorrow is Christmas. Try to find some peace, if you can. Christmas. I'd forgotten completely. It was Christmas Eve afternoon, and I was supposed to be at Cassidy's house making cinnamon rolls, decorating the tree, starting new traditions. Instead, I was in a hospital room. My daughter recovering from torture. My grandchild growing in her belly. Despite everything, after Agent Sundar left, I sat with Cassidy in silence. She was awake now, more alert, though still groggy from pain medication. Papa, she said quietly, tell me a story about Mom. A happy one. I thought for a moment, then smiled. Remember the Christmas when you were 7? When your mom decided she wanted to cut down our own tree from the property instead of buying one? Cassidy's lips quirked up despite everything. I remember. She picked the biggest tree she could find. A 12-foot Douglas fir that we had no business trying to get into the house. I told her it was too big, but she insisted. We spent 2 hours cutting it down with a handsaw. Your mom wouldn't let me use the chainsaw because she said it wasn't traditional enough. And then it wouldn't fit through the door. Nope. We had to cut 3 feet off the bottom, then cut another 2 feet off the top. By the time we got it inside and upright, it was 7 feet tall and had a completely flat top where we'd sawed it off. Cassidy laughed a real laugh. The first I'd heard from her since this nightmare began. And Mom made that ridiculous cardboard star to cover the flat part. She did. Covered it in gold glitter. That star was bigger than your head, and she was so proud of it. I miss her, Papa. I miss her too, baby. We sat quietly, remembering Helena. And slowly, the anger I'd been carrying started to transform into something else. Not forgiveness. I would never forgive Olivia for what she'd done. But determination. Helena had died trying to protect our daughter. Now it was my job to finish what she'd started. To make sure Cassidy and her baby were safe. To make sure the Brennans paid for every crime they'd committed. That evening, Martin brought food from a local diner, real food, not hospital cafeteria meals. We ate together in Cassidy's room. Soup and sandwiches and pie that tasted like normalcy. I have news, Martin said between bites. The FBI's cybercrime unit finished their preliminary analysis of the hospice computer systems. We both looked at him. Someone with administrator privileges altered Helena's medication logs 3 hours after her death. The alterations were made from a computer in the hospice staff lounge using login credentials belonging to Olivia Brennan. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. Olivia had administrator access? She was on the hospice board of directors, major donor. They'd given her an admin account so she could review financial reports and patient satisfaction surveys. She wasn't supposed to have access to medical records, but apparently nobody properly configured her permissions. So she logged in using her own account? Cassidy asked, incredulous. That's incredibly stupid. Arrogant, Martin corrected. She didn't think anyone would ever check. And honestly, if you hadn't started investigating the pill operation, no one probably would have. The hospice had no reason to audit their logs 2 years after a patient's death. Can they charge her? I asked. For Helena's murder? Martin hesitated. The FBI is recommending federal charges for computer fraud and falsifying medical records. Those alone carry significant prison time. As for murder, that's harder. The altered logs prove she had access and opportunity, and they prove she tried to cover something up. But they don't definitively prove she administered a lethal dose of morphine. What about the morphine pump? Cassidy asked. The manufacturer has records, right? Serial numbers? Maintenance logs? The FBI is tracking that down. If they can find the specific pump that was used in Helena's room, and if it has retrievable data showing the dosing history, that could be the smoking gun we need. If. So many ifs. But it was more than we'd had yesterday. More than we'd had 2 years ago, when Helena died, and we'd accepted the doctor's explanations because we had no reason to doubt them. There's something else, Martin said. The State Pharmacy Board raided all 3 of Olivia's pain clinics this morning. They found extensive evidence of the pill mill operation, false prescriptions, patient files for deceased individuals, stockpiles of controlled substances. They arrested 6 staff members, doctors, physician assistants, nurses, who were all part of the scheme. 6 people knew? I asked, stunned. At least 6. Maybe more. This wasn't just Olivia and her sons. This was an organized criminal enterprise with multiple layers. They've been operating for at least 3 years, possibly longer. The total value of drugs trafficked could be upward of $10 million. $10 million. And Helena had died because she'd stumbled onto it. Cassidy had nearly died for the same reason. All for money. I hope they all rot, Cassidy said quietly. They will, Martin promised. Federal drug trafficking charges carry mandatory minimum sentences, even with plea deals and cooperation. Most of these people are looking at decades in prison. As the evening wore on and visiting hours ended, I prepared to leave. The hospital had offered me a room in their family accommodations wing, a small space with a bed and bathroom where family members of long-term patients could stay. Before I left Cassidy's room, she asked me one more question. Papa, if the baby is a boy, do you think it's okay to name him Elliot, even though he's Trevor's son biologically? I sat back down, took her hand. Cassidy, this baby is yours. Your blood, your body, your choice. Trevor contributed DNA, but he won't be this child's father. That title has to be earned through love and sacrifice and showing up every single day. Trevor forfeited any right to that title when he broke your leg. But what if Elliot grows up and wants to know about his biological father? What if he asks why his father is in prison? Then you tell him the truth. You tell him that his father made terrible choices, that he chose money and his mother's approval over his wife and child, that he hurt people. And then you tell him that he doesn't have to be defined by his father's mistakes, that he gets to choose what kind of man he becomes. Cassidy was crying again, but these were different tears. Healing tears, maybe. Will you help me teach him that? How to be a good man? Every single day, I promised. I'll teach him to fish and to change a tire and to cook cinnamon rolls. I'll teach him to be honest and brave and kind. I'll teach him everything I taught you. And if it's a girl, will you teach Eleanor all those things too? I smiled. Damn right I will. Your mother never let gender stop her from learning anything. And neither will I. I kissed Cassidy's forehead, made sure the federal marshal was still at his post outside her door, and walked to the family accommodations wing. The room was small and sterile, but it had a bed and a shower and a lock on the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of the last 24 hours. My ribs ached where I'd cracked one. My hands were bandaged from the cuts. My body felt like I'd been in a car accident. But Cassidy was alive. My grandchild was growing, safe inside her. And the people who'd tried to destroy my family were facing justice. I called Bill Peterson to let him know his truck was at Harborview and to thank him for lending it to me. Robert, Bill said, I heard what happened. It's all over the news. Federal raid, drug trafficking, some pharmaceutical company heiress arrested. Is Cassidy okay? She will be, I said. It's going to take time, but she'll heal. You need anything, you call me. Anything at all. Thank you, Bill. I hung up and turned on the small television in the room. The local news was indeed covering the story. Asterisk asterisk. Federal drug bust in Bellevue. Pharmaceutical heiress charged in multi-million-dollar pill mill scheme. Asterisk asterisk. The screen showed footage of Olivia's house, the federal agents, the evidence being removed. Then, a photo of Olivia, a professional headshot where she looked elegant and trustworthy. Not like a woman who'd murdered her son's mother-in-law and tortured her daughter-in-law. The news anchor read from a prepared statement. Asterisk. Olivia Brennan, 62, and her 3 sons Trevor Brennan, 32, Blake Brennan, 35, and Garrett Brennan, 30, have been charged with federal drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy. Federal prosecutors allege the Brennan family operated a sophisticated pill mill operation out of 3 pain management clinics in Washington state, illegally distributing oxycodone and fentanyl. The investigation began after a tip from an unnamed whistleblower. Asterisk. Unnamed whistleblower. That was my daughter. My brave, brilliant daughter who'd risked everything to expose these criminals. The news continued. Asterisk. Trevor Brennan's wife, identified as a nurse at Harborview Medical Center, was found injured at the family's Bellevue home and is being treated for undisclosed injuries. Sources close to the investigation say she may have been held against her will, though details remain unclear. Asterisk. They didn't name Cassidy, which I appreciated. She deserved her privacy. I turned off the television and lay down on the unfamiliar bed. Sleep felt impossible, but exhaustion eventually won. I dreamed of Helena. Not the sick, dying Helena from those final weeks, but the healthy, vibrant woman I'd married 35 years ago. In the dream, we were young again, dancing in our small kitchen, while Cassidy, maybe 4 years old, giggled and tried to step on our feet. Helena looked at me with those warm brown eyes and said, "You did good, Robert. You saved our girl. I'm proud of you. I miss you," I said in the dream. "I know. But you don't need me anymore. You're strong enough. Cassidy's strong enough. The baby will be strong enough too. You're all going to be okay. Are you okay? Wherever you are." Helena smiled. "I'm home. Finally home. And I'm waiting for you. But not yet. You still have work to do." I woke on Christmas morning to sunlight streaming through the window and my phone ringing. Agent Sundar's name appeared on the screen. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Chen," she said when I answered. "Merry Christmas. Is everything okay?" "Better than okay. I wanted you to hear this from me before it hits the news. The medical device manufacturer found Helena's morphine pump in their archive. They pulled the data logs from the internal memory. Robert, the pump recorded a manual override 3 hours before Helena's death. Someone administered a bolus dose, a large, sudden injection of morphine that was triple the prescribed amount. My heart stopped. Can they prove who administered it? The hospice has security cameras in the hallways. We pulled footage from the night Helena died. At 2:47 a.m., Olivia Brennan entered Helena's room. She was inside for 11 minutes. When she left, she was carrying her purse, which was noticeably heavier than when she arrived. "The morphine vials," I said. "Exactly. We think she stole several vials to cover up the theft, made it look like normal hospice use, and Robert, the FBI found something else. In Garrett's laptop files, there's an email from Olivia to her sons from 2 years ago, December 19th. The subject line is, 'The Helena Problem.' What did it say? I'll read you the relevant part. Helena Chen saw me at the hospice last night. She was more alert than I expected. She asked why I was in the medication room and what I was doing with the morphine cart. I told her I was volunteering, helping the nurses, but I don't think she believed me. She's friends with several board members at the hospital. If she reports what she saw, they'll investigate. We can't allow that. I'll handle it tonight." The room spun. Helena had seen Olivia stealing drugs from the hospice, had questioned her, and Olivia had murdered her within 48 hours to silence her. Robert, are you still there? Yeah, I'm here. The FBI is recommending first-degree murder charges against Olivia Brennan for Helena's death. Premeditation, motive, opportunity, physical evidence, digital evidence. We have everything we need. The U.S. attorney is filing the charges today, Christmas Day. The day my wife should have been here, opening presents with Cassidy, meeting her grandchild for the first time when the baby was born. Instead, she was gone. But finally, there would be justice. Thank you, I managed to say, for everything you've done. Thank you for trusting your instincts and saving your daughter. Without Cassidy's evidence and your testimony, we might never have uncovered the full extent of this operation. Merry Christmas, Robert. Go see your daughter. I went to Cassidy's room and found her awake, sitting up in bed, eating breakfast from a tray. The federal marshal was still at his post. The morning sun made her look younger, more like the little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. Merry Christmas, Papa, she said when I entered. Merry Christmas, baby. Agent Sundar called me too. Told me about the charges, about the email, about Mom. I sat in the chair beside her bed. How are you feeling? Angry, sad, relieved, guilty that I'm relieved. It's a lot. It is a lot. Papa, do you think Mom knew? That last night, when she told you to protect me from the Brennans, do you think she knew Olivia was going to kill her? I thought about it carefully. I think she suspected. I think she knew she'd seen something dangerous and she was afraid Olivia would retaliate. But I also think she believed I could protect you. That you'd be safe as long as I was watching out for you. You did protect me. You saved my life. You saved your own life, Cassidy. You gathered the evidence. You were smart enough to make backups. You fought to survive, even when they tried to break you. I just showed up and kicked down a door. She smiled. You did more than that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, eating terrible hospital bacon and drinking terrible hospital coffee, and somehow it felt right. It felt like Christmas, despite everything. Around mid-morning, a nurse came in with a surprise. A small Christmas tree, maybe 2 feet tall, decorated with simple ornaments and battery-powered lights. The staff put this together for you, the nurse said. We heard what happened. We wanted you to have something cheerful to look at. Cassidy's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, that's really kind. After the nurse left, I stood and pulled a small wrapped package from my jacket pocket. Before everything happened, Cassidy took it carefully, unwrapped it. Inside was a silver locket on a delicate chain. When she opened it, she found 2 photos. One of Helena, one of me. So you always have us with you, I said. Both of us. Your mother watching over you from wherever she is, and your father right here. As long as I'm breathing. Cassidy put it on immediately, held it against her heart. I love it, Papa. I love you. I love you too, baby. More than you could ever know. Later that afternoon, Martin arrived with actual Christmas dinner. Turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing from a restaurant that was open on the holiday. We ate together in Cassidy's room, the 3 of us, plus the federal marshal who joined us when we insisted. It wasn't the Christmas I'd planned. There were no cinnamon rolls, no tree in Cassidy's living room, no new tradition started in her beautiful home. But we were together. We were safe. That was enough. That was everything. Asterisk. Subscribe if you think justice matters more than rules. The next part proves why. Asterisk. Number. Asterisk. Chapter 5. The system's betrayal. Asterisk. They arrested me. Not Olivia. Me. Actually, that's not true. They arrested all of us. But the way they treated me, versus the way they treated Olivia, made it clear that justice was still a war we were fighting, not a victory we'd won. Let me back up. 3 days after Christmas, I was at the hospital with Cassidy when 2 Seattle Police Department detectives showed up. Not federal agents, local cops. Mr. Robert Chen? The lead detective asked. He was white, 50s, with the kind of mustache that suggested he'd been on the force since the 90 seconds and hadn't updated his look since. His name tag read, Detective Morrison. That's me. We need you to come down to the station to answer some questions about the incident at 1247 Lakeview Drive on December 23rd. I've already given a full statement to the FBI and DEA, I said, standing up from Cassidy's bedside. This is a separate investigation. Local jurisdiction. The property owner has filed a complaint. I felt cold. What kind of complaint? Morrison's partner, a younger Asian woman named Detective Kim, consulted her notes. Breaking and entering, criminal trespass, assault causing bodily harm to Blake Brennan, destruction of property, and reckless endangerment. You're joking. We don't joke about criminal complaints, Mr. Chen. Now, you can come voluntarily, and we can do this the easy way. Or, he's coming voluntarily, Martin said, appearing in the doorway. I hadn't heard him arrive, but thank God he was there. And his attorney is coming with him. Martin had called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a criminal defense attorney named David Kwan. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, sharper suit. We met in the hospital lobby. Here's what's happening, David explained quickly. Olivia Brennan's attorney, Clayton Morse, has orchestrated a counter-narrative. He's claiming you broke into the house illegally, assaulted Blake without provocation, and traumatized his clients. He's trying to muddy the waters, make you look like a vigilante, undermine your credibility as a witness. That's insane. I saved my daughter's life. I know that. The federal prosecutors know that. But Morse is playing a different game. He's creating reasonable doubt, giving the defense ammunition for trial. If he can make you look reckless or violent, he can argue that your testimony about what happened in that basement is unreliable. At the police station, they took me to an interview room. Gray walls, metal table, two-way mirror. I'd seen enough cop shows to know the setup. Detective Morrison started the recording. December 28th, 2024, 2:15 p.m. Interview with Robert Chen regarding incident at 1247 Lakeview Drive. Mr. Chen, you've been read your rights? Yes. And you understand you can stop this interview at any time? I understand. Good. Let's start with the break-in. What time did you enter the property on December 23rd? David cut in immediately. My client did not break in. He was responding to a distress call from his daughter, who was being held against her will. Morrison didn't even look at David. Mr. Chen, did you have permission to enter the property? No, but did you use force to gain entry? I broke a basement window because... So, you admit to property destruction. Detective, David said sharply, my client's daughter was imprisoned in that basement. She had been tortured. She was in immediate mortal danger. He was exercising his legal right to rescue someone under duress. Morrison leaned back. That's a nice story, but we have a different version of events from Mr. Blake Brennan. He says Robert Chen attacked him unprovoked, struck him multiple times with a blunt object, and caused a traumatic head injury requiring medical treatment. I felt rage building. Blake Brennan was about to inject my daughter with a lethal dose of drugs. I stopped him from committing murder. Do you have evidence of that alleged murder attempt? The syringe. The drugs on the table. Cassidy's testimony. The syringe that you claim Blake was holding? We didn't find Blake's fingerprints on it. We found yours. My mouth opened. Closed. I grabbed it after I knocked it out of his hand. Or you brought it with you to plant evidence, to justify your violent entry into the home. That's absurd. David stood. We're done here. My client came voluntarily to give his account. If you're going to accuse him of fabricating evidence, charge him or release him. Morrison smiled a thin, cold smile. Mr. Chen, you're free to go. For now. But don't leave King County. We may have more questions. Outside the station, I turned to David. They're actually considering charging me? Morse is putting pressure on the Seattle PD. He's got connections, political capital. He's trying to create a both sides narrative. Olivia and her sons are criminals, yes, but so are you. You're a violent vigilante who took the law into your own hands. I saved my daughter's life. I know. And a jury will know that too, if it comes to trial. But Robert, you need to prepare yourself. This is how defense attorneys work when they're outgunned. They don't deny the facts, they attack the witnesses. The next day, the Seattle Times published an article. Asterisk, asterisk. Federal drug case. Complicated by civilian interference. Defense claims evidence may be tainted. Asterisk. Asterisk. The article detailed the federal charges against the Brennans, but it also included quotes from Clayton Morse. Asterisk. While we don't condone the alleged activities my clients are accused of, we have serious concerns about the integrity of the evidence. Robert Chen, the father of the alleged victim, broke into a private residence, assaulted multiple individuals, and potentially planted or contaminated evidence. Any evidence gathered as a result of his illegal actions should be suppressed. Asterisk. The article painted me as a rogue actor, a grieving father who'd gone too far. The comments section was worse. Half the people called me a hero. The other half called me a dangerous vigilante who'd undermined a legitimate investigation. I stopped reading after the 10th comment suggesting I should be in jail alongside the Brennans. Agent Sundar called me that afternoon. Robert, I'm sorry about the Seattle PD interview. That was Morse's doing. He's trying to create problems for us. Is he going to succeed? Not on the federal case. We have independent evidence that corroborates everything you and Cassidy said. The drugs, the pill press, the financial records, the altered medical files. Your actions didn't taint that evidence. And more importantly, we have Cassidy's USB drive and the audio recording she made before she was imprisoned. None of that involves you. What about the local charges? I don't think Seattle PD will pursue them. The DA's office knows it would be political suicide to charge the father who saved his daughter. But Morse is going to use the threat to try to pressure you into backing off. I'm not backing off. I know. But Robert, you need to be careful. Olivia made bail. She's out there. And she's pissed. Her empire is crumbling. Her sons are in jail, and she's looking at life in prison. Desperate people do desperate things. That night, I had trouble sleeping in the family accommodations room. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like a threat. I kept thinking about Olivia's smile in her living room. The way she'd looked at me like I was an ant she could crush. Was she planning revenge? Would she come after Cassidy again? After me? Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk. You should have stayed in Oregon. Old man, you've made this worse for everyone. Especially Cassidy. Asterisk. I sat up, heart racing. Replied. Asterisk. Who is this? Asterisk. No response. I forwarded the text to Agent Sundar. She called back within 5 minutes. Robert, has anyone else contacted you? Phone calls, emails, people following you? No. Just that text. I'm tracing the number. In the meantime, I'm assigning a protection detail to you and Cassidy. This could be a violation of Olivia's bail conditions. She's not supposed to contact any witnesses. Can you prove it was her? Working on it. The number is a burner phone, bought with cash at a convenience store. But there are security cameras. If Olivia or anyone connected to her bought that phone, we'll know. The protection detail arrived the next morning. 2 federal marshals, who rotated shifts outside Cassidy's room and followed me whenever I left the hospital. It felt surreal, walking through Seattle with armed guards, knowing that the woman who'd killed my wife might be plotting to kill me too. But it also felt necessary, because Agent Sundar was right. Desperate people do desperate things. On December 30th, all 4 Brennans appeared before federal judge Patricia Morales for their arraignment. I sat in the courtroom gallery with Martin and Agent Sundar. Cassidy was still in the hospital, recovering from surgery, but she appeared via video link on a monitor at the prosecution table. Trevor was brought in first, wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. He looked terrible. Gaunt. Unshaven. dark circles under his eyes. He wouldn't look at the monitor where Cassidy's face appeared. Blake and Garrett came next, similarly shackled and disheveled. And finally, Olivia. She walked in unshackled because she'd made bail wearing an expensive navy suit and heels. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. She looked like she was attending a charity luncheon, not a criminal arraignment. She glanced at the gallery, found me, and smiled again. That same knowing, contemptuous smile. I gripped the bench in front of me until my knuckles went white. Judge Morales was a Latina woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Good afternoon," she said crisply. "We're here for the arraignment of Olivia Brennan, Trevor Brennan, Blake Brennan, and Garrett Brennan on multiple federal charges. Will the defendants please rise for the reading of charges?" They stood. Clayton Morse stood beside Olivia. The other three had public defenders. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Kim, no relation to Detective Kim, began reading the charges. There were dozens: conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, wire fraud, healthcare fraud, falsifying medical records, computer fraud, assault, kidnapping, attempted murder, and first-degree murder in the death of Helena Chen. The list took 5 minutes to read. When Kim finished, Judge Morales asked, "How do the defendants plead?" "One by one," they answered. "Trevor, not guilty. Blake, not guilty. Garrett, not guilty. Olivia, not guilty." All four, denying everything, despite the mountains of evidence. Judge Morales set trial dates. Blake and Garrett's trial would begin in April. Trevor's in May. Olivia's in June. Murder trials are complex, require more preparation. Regarding bail, Judge Morales continued, "Trevor Brennan, Blake Brennan, and Garrett Brennan will remain in federal custody without bail due to flight risk and danger to the community. Olivia Brennan's bail will continue under house arrest with GPS monitoring." I wanted to scream. Why did Olivia get special treatment? Why did wealth buy freedom while her sons sat in jail? But I kept silent. This was the system. Unfair, imperfect, but still the only path to justice we had. After the hearing, I met with Prosecutor Kim in her office. "I know you're frustrated about Olivia's bail," she said. "But frankly, it works in our favor. She's comfortable, which means she's underestimating us. And the GPS monitor means we know exactly where she is at all times. What if she runs? If she runs, she forfeits $2 million and becomes a fugitive. The FBI will hunt her down. She's not running." "What about the text I received? The threat?" "We're still investigating. The burner phone was purchased at a 7-Eleven in Bellevue at 11 p.m. on December 27th. Security footage shows a man in a hoodie and mask buying the phone with cash. We can't ID him, but his build is consistent with either Blake or Garrett. But they've been in jail since December 23rd. Exactly. Which means either the footage is wrong, unlikely, or someone bought that phone before the arrests and held on to it. We're pulling phone records to see if that burner has any connections to known associates of the Brennans." It was a lead, but not a solution. Somewhere out there, someone connected to the Brennans had threatened me. And I had no way of knowing if they'd do more than just send texts. I returned to the hospital to find Cassidy in distress. Not physical, her leg was healing well, but emotional. "Papa," she said when I entered, "I got a letter." She handed me an envelope. Expensive stationery. No return address. Postmarked from Seattle. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "Cassidy, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but you don't understand what you've done. You've destroyed our family. Trevor loves you. He was only trying to protect his mother. If you drop the charges and refuse to testify, we can work this out. Trevor will get help. We'll get help. We can be a family again. But if you insist on going through with this trial, if you insist on sending your husband to prison, you'll regret it. Your baby will grow up without a father. You'll be alone. And the memory of what you did to us will haunt you forever. Please. For your sake and your baby's sake, drop the charges. A friend. I felt sick reading it. When did this arrive? This morning. The nurse brought it with my breakfast tray. Did you tell Agent Sundar? I called her. She's sending someone to analyze the letter, see if they can pull fingerprints or DNA. I sat on the edge of her bed. Cassidy, listen to me. This letter is manipulation. Gaslighting. They're trying to make you doubt yourself, make you feel guilty for their actions. I know that, Papa. But what if they're right? What if I'm making a mistake? What if my baby does grow up resenting me for sending their father to prison? Your baby will grow up knowing their mother is the bravest, strongest person I've ever met. Your baby will know that you chose truth and justice over comfortable lies. That's not something to regret. That's something to be proud of. Cassidy wiped her eyes. I'm scared. I know. But you're not alone. I'm here. Martin's here. Agent Sundar and the whole federal task force are here. You have an army protecting you. She nodded. But I could see the doubt lingering. The threats, the letters, the media manipulation, it was all part of Morse's strategy. Break Cassidy's resolve. Make her refuse to testify. Without her testimony, the case against the Brennans would be weaker. Not impossible, they still had the physical evidence, the digital files, the financial records. But Cassidy's first-hand account of being imprisoned, of Trevor breaking her leg, of Olivia's confession about Helena's death, that testimony would seal Olivia's fate. Morse knew that. He was trying to prevent it. Over the next few weeks, the harassment continued. More anonymous texts. More letters. A bouquet of flowers delivered to Cassidy's hospital room with a card that read, "Thinking of you and the baby. Hope you make the right choice." A well-wisher. Each incident was reported. Each one investigated. But the perpetrators stayed hidden. Then, in mid-January, something changed. I was at the hospital cafeteria getting coffee when I saw him. A man in a dark coat standing by the elevators, watching me. Our eyes met. He turned and walked away quickly. I followed. I shouldn't have. I should have called security, called the marshals. But instinct took over. I caught up to him in the parking garage, grabbed his arm. "Who are you? Why are you following me?" He spun around, and I saw his face clearly for the first time. Mid-30s, white, with a scar over his left eyebrow. "Mr. Chen," he said, not struggling. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you." "Who are you?" "My name is Anthony. Anthony Russo. I used to work for Olivia Brennan at one of her pain clinics. I was a physician assistant, one of the 6 arrested in the pharmacy board raid." "Why should I trust you?" I demanded, still gripping his arm. "Because I can give you something you need. Information, evidence, testimony against Olivia." I let go slowly. "Talk. Not here. Too many cameras, too many people. Meet me tonight. Volunteer Park, 9 p.m. Come alone." "I'm not meeting you alone. I have federal protection." "Then bring them." "But Mr. Chen, I'm risking my life telling you this. Olivia has connections. She has people who would kill me if they knew I was talking to you. If I'm going to help you, I need assurances." "What kind of assurances?" "Witness protection, reduced charges, a new life, somewhere far from here." "Can you arrange that?" "I can talk to the prosecutor. I can't promise anything. That's all I ask." 9 p.m. Volunteer Park. "I'll give you everything, names, dates, recordings, documents, everything you need to put Olivia away for life." He pulled his arm free and walked away, disappearing into the parking garage shadows. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to decide if this was a trap or a miracle. I called Agent Sundar immediately. "Don't go," she said flatly. "It's too risky. It could be an ambush, or it could be the break we need. You said yourself that we need more evidence to prove Olivia ordered Helena's death. This guy worked for her. He might have witnessed conversations, might have documents, or he might be working with Olivia to lure you somewhere isolated, where they can kill you, and claim it was self-defense or an accident. So send a team. Wire me. Set up surveillance. But I'm going. Sundar sighed. You're as stubborn as your daughter. Fine. We'll set it up. But Robert, you do exactly what we tell you. No heroics. Understood? Understood. Comment below if you'd have done what comes next. I need to know. I'm not crazy. That night, I walked into Volunteer Park wearing a wire and surrounded by federal agents I couldn't see. The park was dark, cold, nearly empty. A few joggers, a homeless man sleeping on a bench, and sitting on a bench near the water tower, backlit by a distant streetlight, was Anthony Russo. I approached slowly. My heart hammered. Every shadow could be a threat. Mr. Chen, Anthony said as I sat down beside him. You came. I came. Now talk. He pulled out a USB drive. Everything's on here. Patient files showing fake prescriptions. Communications between Olivia and the doctors she bribed. Financial records proving she paid us to look the other way. And recordings. What kind of recordings? Phone calls. I recorded every conversation I had with Olivia for the last year. Insurance, you know? In case she tried to throw me under the bus. Why are you giving this to me now? Because she did throw me under the bus. I'm facing 20 years. My lawyer says the feds have me dead to rights. But if I cooperate, if I testify against Olivia, maybe I get 10 years instead, maybe less. He was bargaining, using evidence as currency to save himself. What's on the recordings? I asked. Anthony looked at me. Proof that Olivia knew about Helena's suspicions. Proof that she planned to silence her. And proof that she ordered Trevor to handle Cassidy when your daughter started asking questions. My breath caught. You have Olivia on tape ordering my daughter's murder? Not directly. She's smart. She uses code words. Handle the problem. Make sure she understands the consequences. But combined with everything else, the timeline, the evidence, the testimonies, it's enough to prove conspiracy. I reached for the USB drive. Anthony pulled it back. Not yet. First, I need your word. You'll talk to the prosecutor. You'll tell them I cooperated. You'll help me get a deal. I'll do what I can. But I'm not the prosecutor. I can't make promises. Then promise me this. If something happens to me, if Olivia's people come for me, you'll make sure this drive gets to the feds. You'll make sure she pays for everything she's done. I promise. He handed me the drive. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. I'm not a hero. I'm a criminal saving his own skin. But maybe this way. Something good comes from all the bad I've done. He stood to leave. That's when the gunshot rang out. My daughter didn't just record evidence. She'd been building a case for 3 months. Anthony Russo collapsed onto the park bench, clutching his shoulder. Blood spread across his coat, black in the dim light. I dropped to my knees beside him. Anthony, stay with me. Another gunshot. The wood of the bench splintered inches from my head. Federal agents. Sundar's voice boomed from somewhere in the darkness. Drop your weapon. Show yourself. I couldn't see the shooter. Couldn't see anything except Anthony bleeding and the USB drive that had fallen from his hand onto the ground. I grabbed the drive, shoved it in my pocket, and tried to apply pressure to Anthony's wound. You're going to be okay. Help is coming. No, Anthony gasped. No, I'm not. Chen, tell them. Tell them about the others. There are more. More people Olivia paid. More people she threatened. It's all on the drive. Names, addresses, witnesses. Don't talk. Save your strength. More gunshots. Return fire from the federal agents positioned around the park. Muzzle flashes in the darkness. Shouting. Sirens approaching. Anthony gripped my hand. My daughter. I have a daughter. 8 years old. Tell her. Tell her I tried to do the right thing at the end. Please. You're going to tell her yourself. Just hold on. His grip loosened. His eyes went unfocused. And Anthony Russo, criminal and informant and father, died on a park bench in Seattle, trying to buy redemption with evidence. The shooter escaped. Despite the federal presence, despite the surveillance, someone had gotten into position and taken the shot. Professional, calculated, and fast enough to disappear before the agents could close in. They found the shooting position later. A rooftop, 3 buildings away, with a clear line of sight to the park bench. Long-range rifle. Olivia's ankle monitor showed she'd been at her home in Bellevue during the shooting. Airtight alibi. But someone working for her had pulled that trigger. Agent Sundar found me in the back of an ambulance, being treated for shock. I wasn't injured, not physically, but I was covered in Anthony's blood and shaking so hard I could barely hold the blanket they'd wrapped around me. "Robert," Sundar said gently, "I need the USB drive." I pulled it from my pocket with trembling hands. "He died protecting this. Said it has everything. Names of witnesses, recordings of Olivia. Proof she ordered hits." Sundar took the drive carefully, sealed it in an evidence bag. "I'm sorry. I should have had more agents in position. Should have anticipated." "You can't anticipate everything. Olivia's playing chess while we're playing checkers. She's always 3 moves ahead." "Not anymore. Anthony's murder? That's a new charge. Obstruction, witness tampering, murder for hire. Every charge we add makes her hole deeper. Unless she gets away with it." Sundar's jaw tightened. "She won't. I swear to you, Robert, she won't." They took me back to the hospital, back to Cassidy's room, where she waited with wide, terrified eyes because she'd heard about the shooting on the news before anyone could tell her I was safe. "Papa." She tried to get out of bed, forgetting her broken leg. "I'm here, baby. I'm okay. They said someone was killed. They said there was a shooting at Volunteer Park." I thought, "I know, but I'm fine. Not a scratch." I held her while she cried, and I didn't tell her about Anthony's last words. Didn't tell her that the man had a daughter who would grow up without a father, just like Cassidy's baby might. Some truths are too heavy to share. The USB drive Anthony died protecting contained exactly what he'd promised: recordings of phone conversations between Olivia and various people in her organization. Doctors she'd bribed to write fake prescriptions. Pharmacists she'd paid to look the other way. Accountants who laundered money. And dealers who distributed the pills on the street. But more importantly, it contained a recording from 3 years ago. Olivia talking to Trevor. The FBI audio team cleaned up the sound, removed background noise, enhanced the voices. Agent Sundar played it for me in a secure conference room at Harborview. "Olivia. She saw me, Trevor. Your mother-in-law saw me taking pills from the hospice supply. She asked questions. Trevor. Mom, Helena's out of it. The morphine, the medications. She probably doesn't even remember. Olivia. She remembered enough to ask why I was in the medication room at 3 a.m. She's friends with people on the hospital board. If she reports this, they'll investigate. They'll find the discrepancies. They'll trace it back to us. Trevor. So what do we do? Olivia. We handle it. Tonight. I'll increase her morphine dose. It'll look like the cancer. Like natural end-of-life progression. No one will question it. Trevor. Mom, that's Olivia. That's survival, Trevor. It's her or us. And I choose us. I choose my family. Silence on the recording. Then Trevor's voice, quieter, resigned. Okay, do what you have to do. I sat in that conference room, listening to my wife's death being planned like it was a business transaction, and something inside me broke. Not my resolve. Not my determination, but the last small piece of mercy I might have felt for these people. They weren't criminals who'd made mistakes. They weren't people who'd been corrupted by circumstance. They were monsters who'd chosen, actively and consciously, to murder an innocent woman because she'd seen something inconvenient. We have her, Sundar said quietly. This recording, combined with the morphine pump data, the altered medical records, the testimony about her presence at the hospice that night, It's a premeditated murder. First degree. Life in prison. No possibility of parole. Good, I said. The trial's still months away. Are you going to be okay until then? I'll be whatever Cassidy needs me to be. Over the next few weeks. The net around Olivia tightened. The FBI identified the shooter at Volunteer Park. A former military sniper named Marcus Webb, who'd been dishonorably discharged for illegal arms dealing. They found communications between Webb and an encrypted phone number that pinged off cell towers near Olivia's house. They arrested Webb. He refused to talk initially, but when presented with life in prison versus a deal, he flipped. Olivia Brennan hired me through an intermediary, Webb told prosecutors. Paid me $50,000 to eliminate Anthony Russo before he could testify. She knew he had evidence. She needed him silenced. Another charge. Another nail in Olivia's coffin. The prosecutor, Rachel Kim, filed a motion to revoke Olivia's bail based on the new evidence. Judge Morales agreed. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, ironically, federal marshals arrived at Olivia's Bellevue home and arrested her. No more bail. No more house arrest. She was remanded to federal custody to await trial. I watched the news coverage from Cassidy's hospital room. Olivia being led out in handcuffs, her perfect hair mussed, her expensive suit wrinkled. No smile this time, just cold fury in her eyes as she looked at the cameras. Cassidy squeezed my hand. She's finally in a cage, like she put me in. Yes, she is. Do you think she understands now? What does it feels like to be powerless? I don't know. People like Olivia. They never really see themselves as the villain. Even now, she probably thinks she's the victim. Cassidy was quiet for a moment. Then, Papa, I want to testify. When the trial starts, I want to look her in the eye and tell the jury everything she did to me. To Mom. To all of us. Are you sure? The defense is going to cross-examine you. They're going to try to make you doubt yourself, make you look unstable or vindictive. I'm sure. I've been preparing. Agent Sundar connected me with a witness prep specialist. I know what to expect, and I'm ready. I looked at my daughter, this woman who'd survived torture, who was growing a baby in her belly despite everything, who was determined to see justice done no matter the personal cost, and I felt pride so intense it hurt. You're the strongest person I know, I said. I learned from the best. In early March, Cassidy was finally released from the hospital. Her leg had healed enough to use crutches, and the doctors cleared her to continue recovery at home. Not Trevor's home in Bellevue. She never wanted to see that house again. Instead, we went back to my cabin in Oregon. Back to the place where this nightmare had started. On that December night when I'd gotten the text, the cabin felt different now. Smaller, somehow, but also more precious. It was the place Helena and I had built our life. The place Cassidy had grown up. The place where new life would soon arrive. Cassidy's divorce from Trevor was finalized in April. He didn't contest it. His lawyers advised him to focus on his criminal defense, not fight a losing battle over a marriage he'd destroyed. She went back to her maiden name, Cassidy Chen. And she legally changed her unborn child's name to Elliot Chen if it was a boy, Eleanor Chen if it was a girl. Trevor would have no legal claim, no visitation rights, no involvement in this child's life. The baby was due in August, right around the time of the trials. In late April, Blake and Garrett's trial began. It lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Cassidy testified via video link. She wasn't required to appear in person due to her medical condition and her status as a federal witness. I sat in the courtroom gallery and watched as she told her story. Calm, clear, unflinching. She described finding the discrepancies in the hospital narcotics inventory, following Trevor to Olivia's pain clinic, discovering the pill press operation, being confronted by Trevor, who called his brothers for backup. She described Blake breaking her leg with a baseball bat, while Trevor held her down and Olivia watched, giving instructions. She described 4 days in that basement. The chain, the cold, the drugs they injected to keep her compliant. the syringe Blake had prepared for her final dose. The jury was riveted. Some of them had tears in their eyes. The defense tried to shake her, suggested she was exaggerating, that her injuries were self-inflicted to frame the Brennans, that she was motivated by greed or revenge. Cassidy never wavered. "I am a registered nurse," she said during cross-examination. "I took an oath to do no harm. These men broke my leg, chained me in a basement, and planned to kill me. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth, and I have the scars to prove it." She lifted her pant leg, showing the jury the scars on her ankle where the chain had cut through flesh, showing the surgical scars where pins held her fibula together. The defense attorney had no response. Blake and Garrett were convicted on all counts, sentenced to 35 years and 28 years respectively, no possibility of parole. 2 down. Trevor's trial began in May. Same evidence, same testimony, same overwhelming proof of guilt. But Trevor had something his brothers didn't: a wife who he'd betrayed and a baby on the way. The prosecution used this ruthlessly. Trevor Brennan didn't just traffic drugs, Rachel Kim told the jury in her closing argument. He trafficked in trust. His wife trusted him. His patients at the hospital trusted him. Society trusted him to use his access responsibly. And he violated every single one of those trusts. He broke his pregnant wife's leg and left her chained in a basement to die. What kind of man does that? The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Trevor was sentenced to 40 years. He would be 72 when he got out, if he lived that long. As they led him away, he looked at the video monitor where Cassidy's face appeared. Tried to say something. The audio was muted, but I could read his lips. "I'm sorry." Cassidy turned off the monitor without responding. 3 down, which left Olivia. Her trial was scheduled for June 15th. The most complex, the most serious, the most important. Because this wasn't just about drugs or money. This was about murder, about Helena, about justice for the woman I'd loved for 35 years. In the weeks leading up to the trial, I prepared myself, reviewed my testimony with the prosecutors, went over every detail of that night, that last conversation with Helena, the morphine pump, Olivia's visit, and I prepared to finally face the woman who'd taken my wife from me. But first, there was something else I needed to do. On June 1st, Cassidy went into labor. 3 weeks early, but the doctors said the baby was healthy and ready. I drove her to Salem Hospital, the same hospital where Helena had been treated for cancer, where we'd spent so many difficult days. But this time was different. This time was about life, not death. Cassidy labored for 14 hours. I stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand, coaching her breathing, telling her she was strong, she was brave, she could do this. At 6:47 a.m. on June 2nd, Eleanor Helena Chen was born. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, full head of dark hair, perfect fingers and toes, and when she cried that first cry, loud and insistent and full of life, something in my heart that had been broken since Helena died started to heal. Cassidy held her daughter, our daughter, really, because I was going to help raise this child, and cried, "Hi, baby. Hi, Eleanor. I'm your mama. And this is your grandpa. We're going to take such good care of you." I touched Eleanor's tiny hand. She gripped my finger with surprising strength. "Welcome to the world, little one," I whispered. "Your grandmother would have loved you so much." For 2 weeks, we lived in a bubble of newborn bliss. Feeding schedules, diaper changes, sleepless nights that somehow didn't feel like hardship, because Eleanor was here, healthy and perfect. But on June 15th, reality intruded. Olivia's trial began. I left Cassidy and Eleanor at the cabin with a trusted neighbor staying with them. Drove back to Seattle, back to the federal courthouse, back to face the woman who'd murdered my wife. The courtroom was packed. Media, victim advocates, law students, people who'd followed the case and wanted to see justice served. Olivia sat at the defense table in a conservative gray suit, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. Clayton Morse beside her, looking confident as ever. but I could see the cracks. Olivia had lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes that no makeup could hide. Months in federal custody had worn on her. Good. The trial lasted 4 weeks. Witness after witness. Expert after expert. The morphine pump data. The altered medical records. The recording of Olivia planning Helena's death. The hospice security footage showing her entering Helena's room. Anthony Russo's testimony from beyond the grave via the recordings he'd made. And finally, my testimony. I took the stand on July 8th, a Tuesday. The courtroom was silent as I was sworn in. Rachel Kim approached gently. "Mr. Chen, can you tell the jury about your wife, Helena?" I looked at the jury, 12 people who would decide Olivia's fate, and told them about Helena, about our life together, our love, our daughter. The way she'd faced cancer with courage and grace. She was the best person I've ever known, I said. She deserved to die in peace, surrounded by people who loved her. Instead, she died alone, murdered by someone she'd trusted. I told them about that last conversation, about Helena's warning about the Brennans, about how I'd dismissed it as medication confusion. I should have listened, I said, my voice breaking. I should have protected her. But I didn't know. I didn't realize Olivia Brennan was capable of this. Kim presented evidence, walked me through the timeline, asked me to identify Helena in photos, to confirm details. Then it was Morse's turn for cross-examination. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and approached with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Chen, I'm sorry for your loss. I truly am. Cancer is a terrible disease. My wife didn't die of cancer," I said flatly. "She was murdered. That's what you believe. But Mr. Chen, isn't it possible that you're grieving? That you're looking for someone to blame? And you've fixated on my client? No? Isn't it possible that Helena's morphine overdose was accidental? That a tired nurse made a mistake? That the hospice staff are the ones who should be held accountable, not Olivia Brennan? The evidence shows. The evidence shows that my client visited your wife. That's not a crime. She was trying to comfort a dying woman. And yes, she later altered some records, which she shouldn't have done. But that's not murder, Mr. Chen. That's poor judgment." I looked past Morse to Olivia. She was watching me with that same contemptuous smile. And I remembered Anthony Russo dying on a park bench, remembered Cassidy chained in a basement, remembered Helena's last words. "Your client is a murderer," I said clearly. "And no amount of expensive lawyers or manipulative arguments will change that. The jury will see through you. The truth will win." Morse smiled thinly. "We'll see." The trial concluded on July 12th. Closing arguments took an entire day. Rachel Kim presented a masterful summary of the evidence, connecting every piece into an unbreakable chain of proof. Morse tried to create reasonable doubt, to suggest alternative explanations, to paint Olivia as a flawed but innocent woman caught in her son's criminal enterprise. The jury didn't buy it. They deliberated for 2 days. On July 14th, they returned with a verdict. I sat in the gallery, holding my breath. "On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Helena Chen, how do you find?" The jury foreman, a middle-aged black woman, stood. "We find the defendant, Olivia Brennan, guilty." The courtroom erupted, gasps, cries, applause. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 2 years. Guilty. Helena's murderer had been found guilty. Olivia's face remained impassive, but I saw her hands trembling. The judge called for order. "Read the guilty verdicts on all remaining charges." Attempted murder of Cassidy. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Money laundering. Witness tampering. Murder for hire. Guilty. 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 Sentencing was set for August 1st. I walked out of that courthouse into the Seattle summer sunshine, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt something close to peace. Justice had been served. Subscribe to hear how this story ends. One final chapter remains. The trial took 8 months. The truth took 30 seconds. On August 1st, I returned to the federal courthouse for Olivia Brennan's sentencing. This time, Cassidy came with me. She'd healed enough to travel, and she wanted to be there. Wanted Olivia to see her holding baby Eleanor, alive and thriving despite everything. The courtroom was even more packed than during the trial. Victim impact statements would be heard today. Cassidy's, mine, and statements from families whose loved ones had died from the counterfeit pills the Brennans had distributed. Olivia was led in wearing prison orange. No more expensive suits, no more perfect hair and makeup. She looked older, grayer, defeated. But when she saw Cassidy holding Eleanor, something flickered in her eyes. Not remorse, something harder to define. Maybe the realization that she'd lost everything, her freedom, her sons, her empire, and her victim had survived and created a new life. Judge Morales called the court to order. "We're here for the sentencing of Olivia Brennan," she said. "Before I impose sentence, I'll hear victim impact statements." "Miss Chen?" Cassidy stood, carefully because of her still healing leg, and approached the microphone. She held Eleanor in one arm, a sheet of paper in the other hand. "Your Honor," Cassidy began, her voice steady. "My name is Cassidy Chen. Olivia Brennan murdered my mother, Helena Chen. She tortured me. She tried to murder me, and she destroyed my marriage and my sense of safety in the world." She paused, looking directly at Olivia. "But she didn't destroy me. I'm still here. My daughter is here. And we're going to live full, happy lives, surrounded by people who love us. Olivia will spend the rest of her life in prison, and that's exactly what she deserves." Cassidy's voice hardened. "I used to believe in redemption. I used to think everyone deserved second chances. But there are some crimes that are unforgivable. Murdering a cancer patient in hospice care is unforgivable. Breaking your pregnant daughter-in-law's leg and planning to overdose her is unforgivable. Ordering the murder of a witness is unforgivable." She folded her paper, her statement complete. "I'm not asking for mercy for this woman. I'm asking for justice. And justice is a life sentence with no possibility of parole." The courtroom was silent as Cassidy returned to her seat. Judge Morales nodded. "Mr. Chen, would you like to make a statement?" I stood, but I didn't approach the microphone. Instead, I walked to within a few feet of Olivia, close enough to see her eyes. "Olivia," I said quietly, "you took the love of my life from me. You tried to take my daughter. You caused pain and suffering to countless people. All for money. All for greed." Olivia finally met my gaze. For the first time, I saw something that might have been regret, or maybe just self-pity. "I forgive you," I said. Gasps from the gallery. Cassidy's head whipped around. "Not because you deserve it," I continued, "but because holding on to hate was poisoning me. Helena wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life consumed by rage. So, I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean freedom. You're still accountable. You still pay the price." I turned back to Judge Morales. "I'm asking for the maximum sentence allowed by law." Olivia's lawyer, Morse, stood for a final plea. "Your Honor, my client is 62 years old. She has no prior criminal record. She's a grandmother, a philanthropist, a woman who made terrible mistakes, but who deserves some measure of compassion." Judge Morales cut him off. "Mr. Morse, your client planned and executed the murder of a dying woman. She tortured her daughter-in-law. She ordered a hit on a witness. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern of calculated cruelty spanning years." Morse sat down. Judge Morales consulted her notes, then looked at Olivia. "Miss Brennan, do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Olivia stood. For a long moment, she was silent. Then, "I did what I had to do to protect my family. That was it. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just justification." Judge Morales's expression hardened. "Miss Brennan, protection of family does not include murder, torture, or drug trafficking. You've destroyed lives, including those of your own sons, who are now serving decades in federal prison because of choices you led them to make. She opened the sentencing document. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Helena Chen, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the charge of attempted murder of Cassidy Chen, I sentence you to an additional 25 years. On the charges of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, witness tampering, and murder for hire, I sentence you to an additional 40 years, to run consecutively. Judge Morales looked up from the document. Miss Brennan, you will spend the rest of your natural life in federal prison. You will never walk free again. You will never hold your grandchildren. You will never attend another charity gala or board meeting. You will die behind bars, and that is the consequence of your actions. The gavel came down. It was over. Federal marshals led Olivia away. She didn't look back at anyone, didn't cry. Just walked out with her head high, even in defeat. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I held Eleanor while Cassidy gave a brief statement. Justice has been served today. My mother can rest in peace. My daughter will grow up safe. And I hope other victims of pharmaceutical fraud and violence find courage in this verdict. Thank you. We didn't answer questions. Just got in Martin's car. He'd driven us to Seattle and headed back to Oregon. As we crossed the Columbia River and the city disappeared behind us, Cassidy said, "Papa, did you mean it? About forgiving her?" I thought about it. I meant it. But forgiveness is complicated. I forgive her because I refuse to let her poison the rest of my life. But I'll never forget, and I'll never stop missing your mother. Me neither. Eleanor made a small sound in her sleep, nestled against Cassidy's chest. You know what Mom would say right now? Cassidy asked. What? She'd say we should celebrate. That we should make cinnamon rolls and tell stories and honor her memory by living fully. I smiled. You're right. That's exactly what she'd say. So that's what we did. 3 years later, Christmas morning, 2028, I woke to the sound of small footsteps running down the hall of my cabin. 3-year-old Eleanor burst into my room, her dark hair wild, her eyes bright with excitement. Gampa, Gampa, Santa came. There are presents. I sat up, my back protesting. I was 67 now. Not as spry as I used to be. Did he? Well, we better go see. Eleanor grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the living room, where Cassidy was already awake, sitting on the couch in her pajamas, coffee in hand, watching her daughter with a smile. The Christmas tree glowed in the corner, a perfectly sized Douglas fir that Cassidy, Eleanor, and I had cut down together from the property last week. On top was a cardboard star covered in gold glitter, a replica of the one Helena had made all those years ago. Presents were scattered beneath the tree. Not extravagant, we didn't need much, but enough to make Eleanor's eyes go wide with wonder. Mama, can I open one, please? Eleanor begged. After breakfast, Cassidy said. You know the rules. Cinnamon rolls first. Eleanor's face lit up even more. Gampa's cinnamon rolls. That's right. Want to help me make them? Yes. We spent the morning in the kitchen. Eleanor standing on a stool beside me, her small hands covered in flour as she helped roll out the dough. Cassidy supervised, offering guidance and taking photos on her phone. This had become our tradition. Every Christmas morning, the three of us made Helena's cinnamon rolls together. We told Eleanor stories about her grandmother, how brave she was, how kind, how much she would have loved meeting her granddaughter. Eleanor didn't really understand death yet. To her, Grandma Helena was like a fairy tale character, someone who existed in stories and photos, but whom she'd never meet. That was okay. As she got older, we'd help her understand. But for now, she knew she was loved, knew she came from a family of strong people, knew her name carried meaning. After breakfast, we opened presents. Eleanor got books and art supplies and a small wooden train set I'd built in my workshop. Cassidy got a new nursing textbook. She was back in school, working toward her nurse practitioner license, and a framed photo of the three of us from Thanksgiving. I got a hand-drawn card from Eleanor that said, "I love you, Gampa," in crooked letters, and a new fishing rod from Cassidy. "For when we go to the river this summer," Cassidy said. "Eleanor's getting old enough to learn. I'm going to teach her everything," I promised, "just like I taught you." Later that afternoon, after Eleanor had exhausted herself playing with her new toys and fallen asleep on the couch, Cassidy and I sat on the porch with mugs of hot chocolate, watching snow fall gently over the pine trees. "I got an email from Agent Sundar yesterday," Cassidy said. "Oh? How's she doing?" "Good. She wanted to update us. Blake Brennan died in prison last month. Heart attack. He was only 38. I absorbed this. Blake, who'd broken Cassidy's leg, who'd been prepared to inject her with lethal drugs, was dead. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness. Just a distant acknowledgement of a fact. "How do you feel about that?" I asked Cassidy. "Same as you, I think. Empty. He made his choices and suffered the consequences. I don't celebrate his death, but I don't mourn it either." "What about Trevor and Garrett? Still in prison. Still will be for decades." "Trevor sends letters sometimes, through his lawyer, asking about Eleanor, asking if I'll let him see her when she's older." "What do you tell him?" "Nothing. I don't respond. Eleanor knows her biological father is in prison. When she's old enough to ask questions, I'll answer them honestly. But I won't force a relationship. That's her choice to make when she's ready." I nodded. That seemed fair. "And Olivia?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Still in federal prison. Medical wing now. She has breast cancer." Ironic, isn't it? The woman who killed my mother with cancer is now dying of it herself. Are they treating it? Basic care, chemo, radiation. But she's still in prison. Still serving her life sentence. She'll die there. We sat in silence for a while, watching the snow. "You know what's strange?" Cassidy finally said. "I thought I'd feel more triumphant when it was all over. When they were all convicted, sentenced, locked away. I thought I'd feel vindicated. But you don't?" "I feel tired. Grateful that it's over. Grateful that Eleanor will never have to fear them. But mostly, just tired. And ready to move forward." "That's healing," I said. "That's healthy. You're not defined by what they did to you anymore. You're defined by what you do next." Cassidy smiled. "What I do next is finish my degree, raise my daughter, and maybe start dating again. There's a doctor at the hospital, Sam. He's kind, patient, good with kids. He knows my history, and he doesn't run away." "Sam sounds like a good man." "He is. I'm not ready yet. But someday. Your mother would be happy for you. She always wanted you to find love. I found it. With Eleanor. With you. With Sam, maybe. Eventually. Love comes in a lot of forms." "It does." Eleanor stirred on the couch inside, making sleepy sounds. Cassidy went to check on her, tucked a blanket around her small body. I stayed on the porch, looking out at the forest that had been my home for 40 years. The place where Helena and I had raised Cassidy. The place where I'd gotten that terrible text 3 Christmases ago. The place where Eleanor was now growing up, safe and loved. My phone buzzed. A text from Martin Hayes. "Merry Christmas, Robert. Hope you, Cassidy, and Eleanor are having a beautiful day. You deserve all the peace in the world." I replied, "Merry Christmas, Martin. Thank you for everything. We're good. We're happy. We're healing." And it was true. We were healing. Not healed, maybe we'd never be fully healed. The scars remained. Cassidy still had nightmares sometimes. But we were moving forward. Building new memories. Creating new traditions. Eleanor would grow up, knowing she came from trauma, yes, but also from love. From strength. From people who fought for justice and won. That evening, after dinner, after Eleanor's bath, after bedtime stories, I tucked my granddaughter into bed in the room that used to be Cassidy's. "Gampa," Eleanor said sleepily. "Tell me about Grandma Helena again." I sat on the edge of her bed. "What do you want to know? Was she brave?" "The bravest person I ever knew. Even when she was sick, even when she was scared, she never gave up. She fought to stay with us as long as she could." "Like Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart. Exactly like Mama. You come from a long line of brave women. Am I brave too?" I kissed her forehead. "You're the bravest of all. Now close your eyes. Tomorrow we're going sledding. Promise?" "Promise." Eleanor's eyes drifted closed, her breathing evening out into sleep. I turned off the light and found Cassidy waiting in the hallway. "You're good with her," Cassidy whispered. "I learned from the best." We walked to the living room together, turned off all the lights except for the Christmas tree, and sat together in the soft glow. "Papa," Cassidy said after a long silence, "thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For coming to Seattle that night, even though I told you to stay away. For fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. For being the kind of father every child deserves." I took her hand. "Thank you for being the kind of daughter who makes fatherhood easy. For being brave enough to expose the truth. For choosing life and love even after everything you endured. We make a good team. The best." We sat there until the fire died down to embers, until the Christmas tree lights seemed to glow even brighter in the darkness, until the world outside our windows was silent and still and peaceful. Somewhere in a federal prison, Olivia Brennan was dying of the same disease that had claimed Helena. Trevor, Blake's memory, and Garrett were locked away, paying for their crimes. But here, in this cabin, in this moment, there was only life. Only love. Only the future stretching ahead of us. Full of possibility, I thought about that December night 3 years ago, when I'd read a text that shattered my world. When I'd made the choice to run toward danger instead of accepting defeat. It was the right choice. It would always be the right choice. Because some fires you run from. But when your child is in danger, you run toward the flames. You breach the door. You save them or die trying. I didn't die. I saved her. And in saving her, I saved myself. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. If you suspect pharmaceutical fraud or elder abuse, contact your state's Adult Protective Services or the FBI. Justice isn't always swift. It isn't always fair. But it's always worth fighting for. If this story moved you, subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who refuse to accept injustice. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who simply refuse to give up.